addiction kills those two people so hard, they stop making the Ford Bronco.
Hey, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's me, Legal Vices, and welcome to the stream. How are we doing? It is that day of the week. It's OJ Simpson Day, and here we are. Before we get going, though, I just want to say I mentioned it yesterday, but I thought it was posted on yesterday's video before we got going, but this was actually posted here. We have one new member to welcome, Maria Rose 1. I don't know if you're here right now, but if not, you should be, because we're talking about you becoming a member. Thank you very much for that. The mid-level bent halos and broken wings tier of the Legal Vices. How are we all doing? It's me. I'm here. I'm having fun. It is 9:04 p.m. here in Korea. Looks like we've got a good group here already. We're starting to pick up. Check in, everyone. We've had a long chat before we got here. Flux is here. Jack Matt. We even have people that come here just to say they're doing me a favor. Ms. Amanda says it is 4 a.m. here. I had to use the loo. Thought I'd stop by and say hi and wish everyone well. I'm going to leave this on for algos, and I've already smashed the like button. Night, night. Well, Ms. Amanda, if you're still awake and listening, thank you so much for just putting us on in the background. And if any of you really, really want to help get the viewable hours up, you ought to do that yourself. Just before you go to sleep, turn a video on and let it lull you and let it play all night long. So who else have we got here? Chris LePage, Instant Karma, Flux is again here. We got lots of Instant Karma and Flux stuff going on here. Liz Gatehouse, cheers. Carolyn Black, definitely not Brandon. Oh, we've got the Brandon contingents here today. That's great. DOA always here. All right, thank you so much, everybody. Checking in from all around the world as usual. How did we get back to OJ? We've been on OJ for like a month now. This is part 3. We went through the horrific opening statements from Chris Darden, and then we went into the not so horrific but not good opening statements of Marcia Clark, both for the prosecution. And today we're gonna compare and contrast that with Johnny Cochran's defense opening statement. But before we do that, a couple back of the house items to discuss and take care of. On the other hand, there's also some things going on in court, some of the preliminary stuff going on that I think you can see how this being one of the first complete start to finish broadcast trials, you can see how things have changed. This is a good example of playing up for the cameras. I think one serious issue that the judge has to address, which is one of the jurors was caught on the moving camera, and then Chris Darden kind of acting like a whiny little bitch. I think completely playing up for the camera. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But to start us off again, everyone just hit that like button. It's always a good thing when you do that. Always appreciate it. Hit the like button, the subscribe button if you haven't done so. Feel free to join the members if you're so inclined. And super chats are there if you want to make sure you get your comment read, your question answered, or if you just want to throw some of your hard-earned money at me, which I gratefully and humbly accept. For example, we have our where'd we go? My mouse is behaving mousely. There we go. Scroll up, buddy. Flux, damn girl, pants are prison, also late and gay. Well, I was late. There's a valid excuse, but you don't want to hear it. The actual valid excuse was I was uploading that clip that I played when I came in, and I swear to God, I saw something. Oh, that's what it was. Brendan, let's go. That's what it was. I thought I saw a flash of green. Gifted 5 Legal Vices memberships. Well, thank you very much, Brandon. I can't believe you're going to let a woman out super chat you. Shame on you. How's that? Did that work? Thank you so much for that, Flux. You are awesome. You're amazing, and you're great. Wow. Always kind of freaks me out. I never know what to say other than just thank you so much for that. All righty. That out of the way, we've got our 51 concurrent viewers, 38 likes, We're usually well up to 100 by now. Maybe people just don't care about OJ Simpson the way I care about OJ Simpson. But we'll let this keep going because that's what we're going to do. Now, today's stream, we're doing something very, very risky for me. We've been watching the really crappy stream that was, the really crappy videos that were uploaded to YouTube. I'm going back to the original source today just for a test. This is a test drive to see if this works. We're going straight back to the Court TV archives. With the court the advantage to the Court TV archives is their audio is really, really good. The disadvantage is there's 4 or 5 ads throughout it, and the big one is it's not really stable, and also I guess the third big one, they could crush me with a copyright claim and or strike if they're so inclined. So I've got the ordinary run-of-the-mill one we've been using from YouTube locked and loaded and ready to go in case there's any indication that Court TV wants to crush me with a copyright claim. But I thought we'd use the Court TV. The ads, they're like 30-second ads. We can deal with them and cover them up and refuse to play them. Well, we can't. They're hardwired in, and you can't skip them. But we can just take them away and mute them while that's going on. With that out of the, Brandon Lesko says the shot fairy will drop drinks when you finish fluxes. Oh, that's I have just poured myself a delicious cocktail with an amazing, just a beautiful little crystal clear ice ball there that is quite lovely. And I'll be sipping on this gently and slowly because it's that good. Traditional old-fashioned, splash of water, brown sugar cube, couple splashes of Angostura bitters, couple of splashes of orange bitters, 2 ounces of rye. Perfect. That's what we're doing. But that it will be gone soon enough. Ladies, gentlemen, members of the Vice Squad, here we go. Let's just jump into the what are we going to call it? The OJ. Well, see, I was going to do that too. I was going to do like an orange juice and vodka thing, like an OJ and vodka thing, but I figured, low hanging fruit, easy cheap joke. Flux, I am going to enjoy this drink. That's why you enjoy your legal vices. And enjoying the dog snoring on my foot. Ooh, the dog just coughed on my foot. Yeah. Thanks, Yoda. All right. Yes, I do too. Love seeing all these green member names. You guys rock a lot. John Byrne is here. John Byrne is the one that's responsible for all of these emojis we've got going so far. So thank you to him for that. That's a deeply appreciated gesture. Don't know what to say other than thanks. Cool. All right, we're going to bring up the feed here. This is just after they've had a break, and it starts off with Judge Ito talking about the mistake of the cameraman catching one of the jurors on camera. Paulo, no, I wasn't. I had the drink here. I was uploading the intro clip. If you saw it, it was taking like way longer than it should have. So you are welcome for the shout out, John. You rock. Thank you so much. Did everyone get their gift? It doesn't tell me on the StreamYard who gets the gift. I assume everybody did. Let's hope so. If you didn't, there's five random gifts floating around out there. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive in. And again, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Let's go in for the Court TV feed. We will see. I hope the Court TV feed stands up. We'll just have to see. It's better audio, a little darker, and we're probably going to start out with a commercial.
Deputy McNair, let's have the jury, please. I'm sorry, Mr. Darden.
Bring the jury out. Okay. The this doesn't have the one on YouTube does. The one on YouTube has Judge Ito talking about the camera and how it caught a juror, and then he says, "Let's bring the jury in. I'll explain to them what happened, so they don't have any misunderstandings about what's going on." And he says, "Let's bring the jury." And then now Chris Darden, what Chris Darden does right here, hands down, I completely believe he did it solely for the cameras. I believe he's playing to the camera here when he asks the judge to do these certain things to make it. I think he wanted to make people think he was like being really smart and being an advocate and trying to keep the defense in their place. But Judge Ito kind of cracked him over the head with it. So let's just see if you think he's asking for these things he doesn't need to be asking for just because the cameras are there and he wants to seem like super lawyer.
The court please consider giving once again the 1.02 instruction indicating to the jurors that statements of counsel.
No, that's part of my standard.
Okay.
Not rereading, but just reminding them of that.
And with regard to the
see, the first thing is like, could we tell them that, could you repeat your instruction that the statements of counsel aren't to be considered evidence? He didn't even get it out, and Judge Ito was like, dude, that's already something we do. You don't need to be bringing it up. I explain that every time. So he didn't need to ask that. He knew it was part of Judge Ito's thing, and Judge Ito slapped him down before he even got the question out. And then he asks for the second thing.
The exhibition of the defendant's knees, will the court also advise the jury that exhibition is not evidence?
That's understood. And I'm sure Mr. Cochran will mention that to the jurors at the time he thinks that's appropriate. And he's also, I'm sure, advised the staff as to when that's going to happen.
So Johnny Cochran wants to show pictures of OJ Simpson's arthritis-riddled knees. And Chris Darden, he said, well, you can make sure you tell the jury that it's not evidence. It's just for exhibition purposes. And of course, Judge Ito says, yeah, that's understood. And Johnny Cochran will probably be mentioning that himself when he's ready to do it.
It's the last thing.
As to the exhibition of the knees.
Oh, yes, sure. It's not evidence.
Yes, also the fact that you'll have to give the bailiffs advance notice.
No, I've talked to Deputy McNair, Your Honor. We're prepared on that. One thing that I did want to show also, if I could, is there is a mark on his middle finger also.
The one that was displayed by the prosecution yesterday? Yes.
Okay. Those two things I want to not have any surprises for the prosecutor.
Will there be a 352 objection to that? What is the relevance of a scar on his finger today?
See, this is the prosecution just being idiots. During their opening statements, they showed we didn't get to see it, of course, but they showed the jury a picture of a cut on OJ Simpson's finger that was from somewhere around that time. They say during the murder. He said it happened after, when he was somewhere else doing whatever it was. I can't remember how he said he got it, but the prosecution showed that cut on his finger during their opening statements. And so the defense wants to show the scar from that cut during their opening statements. And the prosecution said, well, we object. What's the relevance of showing a scar on his finger today? Well, it's the scar from the cut that you just showed. I mean, this is just stupid, petty crap. And now Darden tries to get snarky again, which I think is for the camera. Because we'll just watch it play out. This was a snark gone wrong.
Oh, I think I'll link it up here.
All right.
So he's asking for the foundation. It's a foundation. What's the link? What's the relevance to the injury? And Johnny Cochran says, well, I'm pretty sure I'll link it up. Don't worry, Chrissy. We'll get it taken care of. And then Chris snarks and it fails.
Yes, also the fact that you'll have to give the bailiffs advance notice.
No, I've talked to Deputy McNair, Your Honor. We're prepared on that. One thing that I did want to show also, if I could, is there is a mark on his middle finger also.
The one that was displayed by the prosecution yesterday? Yes.
Okay. Those two things I want to not have any surprises for the prosecutor.
Will there be a 352 objection to that? What is the relevance of a scar on his finger today?
Oh, I think I'll link it up here.
All right.
Is that an offer of proof? I think I'll link it up.
It's an offer of proof. Thank you.
Is he say, is that an offer of proof? So you basically what he's asking for is before the jury comes, he wants to bring this in. So he has to make an offer of proof. He has to sort of try to show, he has to prove to the judge's satisfaction that there's going to be some sort of link. And so he said, well, I'm pretty sure I'll link it up. Is that an offer of proof, Your Honor? Is that an offer of proof? Yeah, it's an offer of proof. Sit down. That didn't go well. And the jury didn't see it, but you and I saw it. As I think he was just trying to make these objections and these statements just to seem like, the aggressor, to seem like he's smarter than the average bear. And I think it backfired.
All right, let's have the jurors, please. We have now been rejoined by all of our trial jurors. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just give you a brief explanation as to what occurred late yesterday afternoon, just to put your minds at ease and so that you don't speculate as to what the problem was yesterday. Yesterday afternoon, the television camera that is mounted above you swung and inadvertently took a photograph of one of the jurors in our case. And that was brought to my attention, and what I needed to do was immediately get from the personnel operating the camera an explanation as to how that occurred, and to find out what measures would be necessary to prevent that from happening in the future. Because if you recall, when we started this trial, I told each of you, I gave you each my promise that you would not be photographed or in any way represented to the public by way of picture. And so I was very concerned by that report, so I had to take immediate action. And that's why I felt it was necessary for me to stop the proceedings until I could be assured that the problem would not reoccur. I've discussed the matter with the juror whose picture was taken, and we've resolved the fact that there appears to be no problem at this point. It was less than a second that the juror was actually depicted, so it was a relatively minor transgression, but it was something that I felt was serious enough as far as your welfare is concerned that I had to take the time to do it. So I want you to understand that I was interested in your welfare at the time, and I'm sure you understand the need. Unfortunately, it also stopped Mr. Cochran from immediately beginning his opening statement. And on behalf of the court and the court TV, I apologize to defense counsel for that delay. All right, we will now start with the opening statement made by the defense. Let me just remind you that any statements made by the attorneys during the course of their opening statements, of course, is not evidence, should not be considered by you as such. It's merely an explanation as to what they intend to prove or what they think the evidence will show you during the course of this trial. Mr. Cochran, on behalf of Mr. Simpson, are you prepared to proceed?
Ready to proceed, Your Honor. Thank you very, very kindly.
All right, we get Johnny Cochran coming up to the stand here to preach his opening statement. If you'll recall, Chris Darden spoke slow enough that it was still slow when we had it on 1.25 speed, and he talked the whole time in a monotone voice, describing the killings and how terrified Nicole was of her husband, and how they were at a restaurant one day, and it was painful to watch. As one of you in the chat said, it was like he was reading the weather in San Diego, not advocating for the state, not advocating for the victims, not being emotional and bringing up the feelings of rage and horror and murder and death. He just kind of did his thing, and it was horrible. He told a horrible story. Everything was out of order. It was horribly presented. And then Marcia Clark came up and kind of sort of saved the day. She told some very great anecdotes. She was much more lively than he was. She had a great story, great narrative going. Oh, and that was something Chris Darden told everybody about 5 times. Nothing we say is evidence. Don't pay any attention to whatever we say. Don't do all that. Don't take what we say back to the jury room. He spent so much time saying, don't pay attention to us. And then he said stuff he wanted you to pay attention to. She, on the other hand, she gave a pretty good story. She got you emotionally involved in the story, in the narrative. But then about halfway through, she just threw that into the wind and started talking about the DNA evidence in Jurassic Park and fights that never happened and violence that never happened. And it was just weird and disjointed. And Johnny Cochran coming up. Let's see how he does. I mean, he's looking smooth. He's got the power ring on his finger there. Yeah, he's rocking the luxury watch. He's got the chains. He's looking sharp. This guy is presenting for the jury here. I mean, he's looking sharp. Let's see if he talks as good a game as he wears.
My colleagues on the right here, prosecutors, my colleagues on the defense side, to the Brown family, to the Simpson family, to the Goldman families. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you. As the court indicated yesterday, I would have liked to have had this opportunity about 3:30 to address you. And it's my opportunity and it's my honor and privilege on behalf of the defense.
Which clips? This is what I was talking about when I said that court TV is not stable. They're a weak thing that requires a lot of buffering. And if this buffering thing doesn't work itself out here in about 20 seconds, we'll shift over to the standard bad quality YouTube feed that we were using. Yep. All right. Yeah, that's what I thought would happen. Curse you, court TV. I wouldn't be surprised if they were intentionally doing it so people don't do what I'm doing. Stealing their feed. All right. We will bump this out and bring up the one that I had ready as a backup, when I knew that would happen. Again, the audio is not as great, but we at least have the option of some really bad. Nope. We don't even have the option of closed captioning on this. All righty. This is the backup video. Again, audio is pretty quiet on this, so I'll kind of bring my microphone down as well. So, oh, now you're starting? Sorry, Johnny, we bumped you out. You are no longer welcome. Goodbye. All right, we'll fast forward that up to Johnny. Bring the jury in. There we go. Right about there.
My colleagues on the defense side, to the Brown family, to the Simpson family, to the Goldman families.
The audio's not too bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you. As the court indicated yesterday, I would have liked to have had this opportunity about 3:30 to address you. And it's my opportunity and it's my honor and privilege on behalf of the defense and our defense team, as it were, to stand before you now and address you what is called opening statement. Now, the opening statement is not opening argument, but it's just that, opening statement. If you've had occasion to go to a movie, you know that there's something called the previews of coming attractions. And that's what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a guide, our roadmap, if you will, what we expect the evidence to show.
God, he's so good. He is so smooth. Already, he has kicked Chris Darden's ass. In a minute, he has laid Chris Darden out on the mat with a KO. As I was saying a minute ago, Chris Darden's whole thing was, this isn't an argument. Don't pay attention to what we're saying. Don't rely on anything we say. Don't take it back to the jury room with you. Just, don't listen to us. Now, listen to what I have to say. This is what you should do. This is a beautifully presented explanation of what an opening statement is. This is a preview. Johnny is good. Chris Darden is not good. I mean, he's already pounded Chris Darden under the table.
As an officer of this court, and in the course of my remarks this morning and maybe this afternoon, I would expect to tell you as honestly, as forthrightly as I can what I expect the evidence to be. As the court has so appropriately indicated, what I say is not evidence. It's just to aid you and guide you. I hope you remember something else the judge said to you last night. You heard the prosecutor's opening statement yesterday. That you were the same admonition applied to them. Those were not facts. But you kept an open mind because you promised to do that throughout. We started this process of trial back on September 26th, 1994. That was the first day we all met when you came down to that jury room up on the 11th floor. And here we are now, several months later, in this search for justice. You hear a lot about this talk about justice. I guess Dr. Martin Luther King said it best when he said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so we are now embarked upon this search for justice.
And if memory serves me, 6 of the jurors were black, I believe. But I know there was there was several black jurors. I think it was 6 ultimately. They had a huge reserve of alternates because of the length of the trial. But again, Darden didn't do any of this that I recall. But what do you do if you want to appeal to your black? Quote Martin Luther King about justice to the black jurors. Dude is good.
This search for truth. This search for the facts. Each of you made a number of promises in the course of the voir dire examination, which is basically unprecedented and due mainly to the largesse of Judge Ito in understanding the possibility of media taint associated with this case.
He said taint.
So we know a lot about you at this point. And we, of course,
I'm
all
12.
sides are very, very pleased with the fact that you've agreed to serve as jurors, to give us your time, to leave your lives, to be sequestered, as it were. That's a remarkable sacrifice. Abraham Lincoln said it best when he said that the highest
Preach to the black people about Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King, you slick son of a bitch. I love this guy.
act of citizenship is jury service. And you're embarked upon that jury service. But it doesn't stop with just coming down and taking notes. It doesn't stop with the inconvenience of being away from your families. When it stops is when you, if you can, render a verdict in this case. And whether or not that verdict reflects the evidence in this case. A verdict rendered devoid of sympathy for or passion against Mr. Simpson or any side of this case. You made these promises, and both sides are mindful of those promises. And we know that you're going to keep those promises. Cicero said that he who violates his oath profanes the divinity of faith itself.
Okay, Cicero,
And of
you're
course,
going a
we know
little
that you
bit
will live up to your
off
promises.
the reservation.
And be
there.
fair and keep an open mind.
Cicero.
And decide this case not on speculation, not on conjecture, not on surmise, but based upon the facts. You then, as jurors, are the conscience of this community.
His
Your
inflection
verdicts
is spot
set the
on.
standards of what we should have and what should happen in this community. You have this rare opportunity, it seems to me, to be participants in this search for justice and for truth. And in the final analysis, hopefully by April of this year, I'm optimistic still, you'll be able to render perhaps the most important decision of your lives.
April. Wow. The judgment didn't come down till September, I believe. Or October. Yeah, it wasn't April. Again, this was the longest jury sequestration in U.S. history. 265 days they were locked in a hotel room, in a holding pen, in a courtroom, and sort of went out on weekends as a group on little tour buses to do things. They were sequestered in their hotel rooms, away from their family, their jobs, and everyone else for 11 months. So yeah, it didn't finish by April.
And so we want to keep your minds open and fresh so that you can render that decision impartially to both sides, so that people all across the world can say, this system works. This was a fair trial. These were fair people. So thank you in advance again for your service, for the verdict that you're likely to render, and for all the things that you're doing here for us.
Your Honor, the court knows me, and I know Mr. Cochran knows me. I have to interject at this point.
Okay, if you are going to interrupt someone's opening statement, you had better have something equivalent to a nuclear bomb to drop, because opening statements are virtually sacrosanct. You can, as long as you're not arguing, you can pretty much say anything you want and nobody interrupts you. So you can see this like WTF look on his face. Let's see where this goes. And while I'm seeing where that's going, I think I'm going for the backup booze. Cool. Which is an amazing Glenmorangie, the legend, the Cad Bowl. What a great, great, great scotch that is. All right. Let's see who is so important that they have to interrupt this statement, this opening statement. Now, they 265 days they were sequestered for 11 months. I believe.
This is argument.
Were introductory remarks that were similar in nature to prosecution's opening remarks. I think Mr. Cochran has just concluded his opening remarks.
And I trust so, Your Honor.
That's exactly correct, Your
Honor. And again, I hesitate to interrupt
Then don't.
another lawyer's opening statement.
You
but
should.
I simply wanted to make sure that this type of statement was ceasing. Thank you, Mr. Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler.
That thank you was, that's how you say go intercourse yourself in lawyer talk. Yeah, thank you.
I was just about to compliment the district attorney's office on their opening statement yesterday.
There you go. And there you come with the pimp slap. Johnny C with the pimp slap. I was just going to compliment them, but then they're douche nozzles. So read between the lines. I take it back.
Maybe I'll take that out now. I was about to say they did a thorough job, as far as they went. But they're
It wasn't 11.
And all of us.
The trial itself was 11 months. The jury was sequestered and involved for 9 months. You're correct.
You will see today have an obligation to tell you the whole truth of these facts. So in the course of my statement today, let me share with you some of the things they didn't tell you yesterday. And we'll have to wonder why they didn't do that. The evidence in this case, we believe will show that OJ Simpson is an innocent man wrongfully accused. Mr. Darden said yesterday that in Richmond, California, and someplace in Georgia, people were asking questions. Well, I'd like to think that in my hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana, my mother-in-law is in New Orleans, Louisiana, and other places throughout this country. Today they're asking, why did Mr. Darden spend all that time on domestic violence? This is a murder case. Why did he do that? And when he gave you this answer, he was going to answer the question for all of America. It's a little presumptuous, don't you think? Because the answer of O.J. Simpson's guilt or innocence will only be determined by you if you're able to do it. None of us were out there on June 12th, 1994. We can only deal with the witnesses as they were. And it seems to me that this case, the prosecution's case, based on what we heard in the evidence, will show this case is about a rush to judgment, an obsession to win at any cost and by any means necessary.
And that was the theme they continued through the whole.
The prosecution in this case has enlisted the services.
Oh, all right. They've enlisted the services of somebody while it's quiet, while it's muted for some reason. Alexander Ledgerwood, thank you. And in that moment of levity, Johnny wins the jury. Absolutely. And Brandon Lesko, after grisly photos of the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson were shown in court, OJ turned his head away and wept. It was at that moment he realized he would never be able to kill her again.
They didn't talk about yesterday and they didn't tell you about it.
Wow.
There's a lady who lives next door and works next door to Mr. Simpson's home on Rockingham. This lady was interviewed as far back, I think it's July. She indicated essentially that on this night in question, she came out to walk her dog on several occasions. She knew Mr. Simpson. She knew his voice. She knew the Bronco. She'd seen it parked there many times. She will indicate that when she came out and walked her dog at about 8 o'clock, that Bronco was parked at the curb there. And it was parked at kind of a unique angle so that she noticed it. The rear wheels were a little bit further from the curb. And when you go out there, and I think the court will probably share with you that at some point, you're going to get a chance to go out to each of these scenes to see for yourself.
Okay, if you'll remember the in the opening statement, it was mumbled by the prosecution lawyers that OJ had to get to the airport and he had called for a driver and the driver had showed up. He said there was no Bronco there at 10:45 when he was supposed to pick him up, and that he drove around and went somewhere else and then came and looked, and then the Bronco was there. So they're saying that the Bronco came there after 10:45, but Johnny's telling you that we have witnesses that'll tell you otherwise.
These areas. When you come out of the Rockingham gate and you make your turn, the evidence will show it's a quick turn. So you can't land the car up quite like you'd like to. But this lady will testify that she was out with her dog and saw that Bronco parked at that particular angle at about 8 o'clock, 8:30 on June 12th.
Yeah, you should be destroying my liver.
94 Sunday evening. She will indicate to you that she heard Mr. Simpson's voice at or about the time he and Mr. Cato Kalin went to McDonald's to get the hamburger. But she could hear, because her quarters are right across the fence there, that after he left, she heard something very strange. She heard a prowler that she described out there in the yard with like hard-soled shoes. And she was concerned about this prowler. That's what her statement was. She relaxed when she heard Mr. Simpson return back, could hear his voice back over in the yard. She was concerned because the people she works for were out of town at this time. She's concerned about this prowler. We'll talk about that more later. She went about her business, and then she heard Mr. Simpson's voice again about 11 o'clock. She could hear his voice at that time as though he was leaving. We know that's correct because he was leaving to go on a trip to Chicago, a pre-planned trip. And then she didn't hear his voice anymore. But one of the important things that she tells us is that after Mr. Simpson had left after 11 o'clock, she heard men's voices over on the Simpson property between 12 o'clock up till about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Heard these men's voices over there talking. She didn't know what was going on.
Good question. The OJ Simpson jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. I believe it was about 3 hours and 45 minutes, something like that. Less than 4 hours.
I hope I told you that when she came out to walk her dog at 10:15, that same night, she looked at the Bronco, and the Bronco was parked exactly the same way at that curb. Same way. When she saw the Bronco the next morning, it was parked that same spot, the same place. And one of the most unique things about this lady is the fact that the morning of June 14th, that Monday morning, a police officer came over to her residence to ask her what she'd heard and to put her on alert that if she found any weapons or if the gardeners found any weapons, to let them know. And she can identify that officer as Detective Mark Furman.
The racist, the N-bomb dropping racist cop is the one saying, now, if you find any weapons or any evidence, like gloves, wink, 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 let us know. Wink, wink, wink. Yep.
Detective Mark Furman will play an integral part in this case for a number of reasons. Now, it's very interesting that the prosecution never once mentioned his name yesterday. It's like they just want to hide him. But they can't hide him. He's very much a part of this case.
They want to hide him for a good reason.
Why didn't they mention him? I think that answer will become very clear to you as the case progresses. But she will identify Detective Furman as the person who came over and spoke with her. And she told him at that time about her observations, about hearing this prowler, and about the fact that she heard these voices that went on until about 3 o'clock because she couldn't go to sleep until about 4. When she woke up, it was like 7:30 or 8. And he was there showing his badge through the door. And she saw him on television at the preliminary hearing. So that's how she could identify him. He said that somebody from the LAPD will get back to you. But they never came back. They never came back at all. Because there's a rush to judgment here. There's another witness, Mary Ann Gerches, a very interesting lady, has her own business. On this particular night, in June of 1994, June 12th again, she wanted to find a place in the West Los Angeles, Brentwood area. She drove her car after she closed up her business on Sunday evening and went to Catholic church, went to mass, went and parked the car. And she came over there on Monday. Very interesting. Before I tell you what she has to say, let me tell you her contact with law enforcement. The evidence will show that Mary Ann Gerches, after she became aware that what she had seen had some great relevance to this case, started calling the police. She kept being transferred around. Couldn't get anybody really to talk to her. Finally, when she finally reached the police officer, they told her, we've got that case all wrapped up. They didn't want to hear from anybody else. And then, lo and behold, she called the district attorney's office, spoke to a person whose name will be revealed during the testimony, and she didn't feel she's treated quite appropriately. In fact, she will say that the person put her on hold and said, excuse me, I'm talking to a psychic right now, and I'll get back to you. I guess it was part of that hotline they had. So it seems they're more interested in talking to a psychic than talking to her. So ultimately,
Marcia, did you see that? As soon as that was good. Watch Marcia Clark down here. I mean, this is part of the thing they maintain through the whole thing. It's a rush to judgment. They wanted to pin this on OJ. They didn't look at anybody else seriously. They had him focused. They have the lady next door that says she saw other people, she heard other people, and his truck, his Bronco was there the whole time, but they didn't want to talk to him. The police never got back to her. Then you have someone who's calling into the DA's office, and they're talking to a psychic. They would rather talk to a psychic than someone with information. And watch Marcia Clark here. She just kind of does this fuck thing. While we're here, real quick, Furman took contaminated blood and put it at the scene to assure there would be no repeat of the 1992 LA riot. So that's somebody did, or at least that's the allegation. And he was also a confirmed racist, which is probably why they didn't mention him. But Jason Lozatti, thank you so much. I hope it would be the same, but I do wonder if this case were presented today with the same evidence, if they would have the same outcome. Again, this goes beyond, this isn't an issue of did he do it or not for me. It's an issue of did the state prove, did they fulfill their burden, their requirement to prove in a court of law beyond a reasonable doubt that this defendant did this bad thing before they take away his rights and throw him in jail for the rest of his life? That's what it's about to me. Did they do their job? Did they take away all reasonable doubt? And I say no, and I would like to think that that's how it would be looked at today as well. That it sucks to say, regardless of whether or not he murdered two people, but I kind of have to say that regardless of whether he did it or not, did the state do a sufficient job in prosecuting in such a way as to take away all reasonable doubt? Not all doubt, not just reasonable doubt. Did they take? And I don't think they did. And I would hope that the jury would be the same way today. Let's dive back into it.
They're more interested in talking to a psychic.
Look at her. She just pushes. She's like, fuck.
So ultimately,
I just love that. She's like,
talking to a psychic than talking to her. So ultimately, she called the defense, and we talked to her. Walked with her out of the scene. Here's what she will testify about. That on June 12th, 1994, sometime after 10:30 in the evening, she's walking down Bundy. She's looking, it's a warm night, she says. She's looking for places that have signs up to rent or to lease. That Miss Nicole Brown Simpson's condo, you recall, is on one side of the street, that's the west side, and she's on the east side of the street. And at about 10:45 p.m., she sees 4 men who come within 10 feet of her, 2 of which, gentlemen, appear to be Hispanic. I think the other are Caucasian. Several of which I believe have knit caps on their heads. The 2 who are behind apparently have something in their hands they're carrying. She thinks they may be undercover police. She doesn't know. They get into an unmarked car and they speed away, and she sees them. And that's what this lady was trying to tell the police, trying to tell the district attorney, trying to tell anybody who would listen. But they didn't want to listen because they made their decision in this rush to judgment. There are other witnesses that I won't bother you with right now because we'll talk about them later on in the course of the opening statement that bear upon that evening. I will share just 2 of you because it sets the stage for many of the remarks that Ms. Clark made yesterday. You recall that in her opening statement, quite well done, Ms. Clark kept telling you that she had to fix the time of death in this case at about, what'd she say, about 10:15? She had to make it 10:15, and she made it based upon a dog's wail. Now, this is the first case you'll ever hear where the prosecution's theory is that you've got to determine the cause of the time of death by a dog's wail.
He's crushing it, guys. I mean, he is crushing it. Whether he's exaggerating or not, he's crushing it.
It's most scientific of all cases.
It's the most scientific of all cases. You have to determine if the dog does not bark, he must not have killed. I tried to come up with a rhyme and couldn't. But yeah. He's just saying basically, yeah, the only way they can fix the time of death is because a dog was barking. Congratulations. Welcome to forensic science. A dog barking. Come on, prosecution. You can do better than that.
But there's a reason why she wants that, because she wants to give enough time for her theory about OJ Simpson to work. But we will produce for you, and hopefully all these witnesses will be available. As you're well aware, these witnesses are afraid. This could be because of all the media attention, but we're going to try to get them. And what I say to you is what these witnesses have said to us at this point. It's 2 people who have been to Mezzaluna restaurant, the same restaurant. Mr. Dan Mandel and Miss Ellen Aronson. They've been on a blind date. It's like their first date. And they're walking home. They walk home and they come right down Bundy also. It's very interesting as they walk down Bundy. They walk on the west side of the street, right past 875, Miss Nicole Brown Simpson's residence. And they walk past there, and it's interesting because as you saw from those pictures, and we all apologize you have to look at those pictures, and certainly to the family, and we want to be as careful as we can with those pictures. But if you saw those pictures, you could see with the gate open, and you walk right past, the sidewalk comes right down, and the bodies were very visible with the gate open. They didn't see any gate open or any bodies or anything. And it was like 10:25 at that point. So what does that do to their theory about 10:15 and the dog's will? Now, who are we going to, well, I won't be argumentative. At any rate, there'll be evidence that at 10:25, that people who walk past, who have no axe to grind, have nothing to do with this case, who they know about and we know about, don't see any crime having been committed. There are other witnesses who are going to testify they don't hear any dog barking at 10:15 or no plaintiff wail, whatever that means. And so in this initial phase of the opening statement, what I've tried to share with you is that all of us, it seems to me, have an obligation to share with you and be as honest and forthright as we can. In that connection, you'll recall that Ms. Clark yesterday talked on a number of occasions about the limousine driver and what he saw.
Okay, and again, I like the way he's doing this, and he's doing it absolutely properly. If we go back and recall the prosecution's opening statements, they just said these things. Well, we're going to show you this. We're going to show you that. We're going to show you they had some marital problems. We're going to show you they had arguments. We're going to show you they did this. But what he is saying is, he said, we're not going to tell you this. We're not going to show you this. We're going to bring you witnesses. He goes out of his way to mention that it's the witnesses who are going to come and testify about what's going on. That's what you want to put in the jury's head, not the lawyer, because Chris Darden just told them, don't listen to anything we say. Anything we tell you is not evidence. Don't take us into the jury room with you. And then he says, we are going to show you, we're going to tell you, we're going to do this. So he's basically saying, just ignore me. But Johnny Cochran is saying, we are going to bring people. We're going to bring the lady next door. We're going to bring the people walking down the street. We're going to be people that we're bringing the people to their restaurants. We're going to bring in these people. These real live breathing people are going to come and tell you what they saw. The prosecution didn't do that at all. And I mean, that's a beautiful way to do it. And that's the way it should be done. I mean, you shouldn't say it's a beautiful way. It's the right way. It's the proper way of doing it. Say, our witnesses, we're going to bring in this person to show this. This person is going to say that. The other person is going to say the other thing. Not us, them. They're going to be the witnesses. That's good.
You recall she said to you that the limousine driver, when he came and left to take Mr. Simpson to the airport, she told you that he did not see the Bronco parked there. It's not exactly what he said in his testimony at the preliminary hearing in the grand jury. And I'd like to read that to you, if I might.
Oops.
He says this question: did you make an effort to look and see if there were any cars there? Answer: I looked to the right to see if there were any cars coming down the street. Well, I'm asking you if you looked.
Overruled.
Watch Johnny here. Watch Johnny Cochran react to her objection. And this is one of these speaking objections. We're objecting. He's talking about stuff that's going to be brought up at later points. He didn't even have to respond. He's just like, bitch, please. And the judge ruled in his favor. I mean, this is the bitch, please, or the what you talking about, Willis? Look, he's like, what are you talking about? Sit down. Stop interrupting my opening statement. And again, it looks really, really bad to the jury if you're interrupting the lawyer during the opening statements, and the judge really, really hates it. But watch Johnny Cochran spin and give her that, what you talking about, Willis? Bitch, please, look on his face.
Well, I'm asking you if you looked.
Overruled.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Sit your ass down, Marcia.
Did you make an effort to look and see if there were any cars?
Oh yeah, Chris is like, fuck. Yeah, I didn't notice Chris. I was too busy watching her give the objection and Johnny Cochran do his thing. All right, let's back this up one more time and see when and how Chris Darden got himself into this position of fuck. All right, here we go.
It's coming down the street. Well, I'm asking you if you looked.
Overruled.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Okay.
Did you make an effort to look and see if there were any cars there? Answer: I looked to the right see if there were any cars coming down the street. Well, I'm asking you, if you looked, made an effort to see if there was a car parked. Answer, no.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Driver who didn't see the car, who the prosecutor said he was there, he didn't see the car, and he was wondering. And this is why you do not interrupt someone when they're doing an opening statement, or anytime when you don't really have a legitimate reason to do it. And that's because they don't get to say it once. They get to go back and say it again because they were interrupted. So did you look for cars? No, I looked to the right, and then I looked down the street to the left to see if any cars were coming down the street. Well, did you look in the car park for parking? Well, I object. All right, you had your objection. Now let me go back again. Did you look down the street? He got to argue it twice, 2 for the price of 1.
There might have been a car there and you didn't see it. Correct.
Yeah, this is murdering the opening of the prosecution. That was their whole deal. The limo driver came. He didn't see the white Bronco. It wasn't there. He drove around. Oh, and then suddenly it was there. Here he's saying, you didn't look for it. You didn't notice it. You didn't look for it. You're right. Correct. I didn't notice it and I didn't look for it. Oof.
Now that's under oath before the grand jury. Now let's look at the preliminary hearing. What he says there, the second time this man testified. Then did you leave? Yes. What gate did you leave from? The Rockingham gate.
Rumor has it.
Which way did you go on Rockingham as you exited the gate? I made a left. So you'll have to picture that as he's coming out of that gate. He's in the driver's compartment. He's going to make a left. The Bronco would be to the right. And which way did you go on the Rockingham as you exited the gate? I made a left. Question. Did you look to see whether any cars were parked on the right side as you faced the driveway of Rockingham outside the residence? Answer, I didn't look to see. You weren't looking at the parked cars? Answer, yeah. You were looking to see if there was traffic. Answer, yes, of course. So
Dramatic pause.
I used those examples early on to talk about our contention that there is this rush to judgment in this case. That when Ms. Clark said yesterday that they did everything they could to exclude Mr. Simpson.
Bullshit.
We're going to talk to you about the trails that they didn't pursue. It didn't go down today. We're going to also talk to you about this evidence, the what we call the lack of integrity of much of the prosecution's evidence.
I like that. This is what we call the lack of integrity of the prosecution's evidence. That was a sneaky way of calling the prosecution a liar when you were saying their evidence is untrustworthy. That was pretty slick too.
You saw yesterday some pictures of this crime scene, and the crime scene was certainly bloody. We all acknowledge that. But I think you'll find the evidence will show that the LAPD, in its infinite wisdom in this case, assigned a trainee named Mazzola, who was the officer in charge of collecting this evidence. This was her third crime scene. And contrary to what you heard yesterday from Ms. Clark, our experts, and we have a number of experts that we call to testify. In fact, one of our experts is named Dr. Kerry Mullis. Let me tell you who Dr. Kerry Mullis is. Dr. Kerry Mullis is a DNA expert. He is the man who invented PCR, polymerase chain reaction. He is the man who received the Nobel Peace Prize for this invention.
Okay, if you're calling expert witnesses who invented the prosecution's test and won the fucking Nobel Peace Prize, you're bringing some pretty heavy swinging balls into that courtroom, and they're going to crush a trainee outright. And I was mentioning the 8.5-day cross-examination of criminologist Fung by Barry Scheck. That's Barry Scheck right over there. he's pretty brutal on Mazzola and her ability to handle a crime scene as a trainee. It was the only thing back then. It was pretty damn special back in 1994, and the guy invented it and won the Nobel Peace Prize for it. Matt Damon. So yeah, that's how you impress your jury. You say all these things the prosecution are going to talk to you about. Our guy invented it. Oh, and he won a Nobel Peace Prize. So believe the Nobel Peace Prize winning inventor or the trainee cop who's done this 3 times. Believe who you want to believe. Crushing.
And he will come in here and tell you about this evidence, how sensitive it is, and how these police departments are not trained in the collection and use of it. That this is, by all accounts, 21st
Nobel
century
Prize
cyberspace technology that is being used by these police departments with covered wagon technology. And so when Ms. Clark tells you yesterday that it's possible it's like cooking or doing something like that,
that's beautiful.
she said she wasn't an expert, and I agree now. Like space technology.
This is him. He's just, again, it's a clever lawyer. We talked about this 2 days ago when I was reviewing the judgment in the Nirvana case, when the lawyer starts bringing the opponent lawyer into the brief and saying the opponent lawyer is an idiot in the briefs. That's getting personal. This next 30 seconds is Johnny Cochran unleashing a complete can of whoop ass directly at Marcia Clark. This is great.
By all accounts, 21st century cyberspace technology that is being used by these police departments with covered wagon technology. And so when Ms. Clark tells you yesterday that it's possible it's like cooking or doing something like that, she said she wasn't an expert, and I agree now on that. At least she's an expert lawyer, but not in this area. The experts would say that's just not true. And so the collection of the evidence becomes very, very, very important in this case. And so
Marcia Clark says she's not an expert, and I agree with her. She's talking about cooking and shit. Yeah, she's not an expert. I'm just enjoying that. That's a bitch slap and a half. She says she's not an expert. Well, I agree with her. They're talking about space cyber technology and they're just using covered wagons. Great
when
argument.
they were trying to hide Furman yesterday, there were a couple of pictures yesterday of an officer leaning down, pointing at the glove and the cap and everything. And you notice that as they talked about it, that was Officer Furman. Never bothered to mention his name, never bothered that. And so we have then this concept of the prosecution's theories. You heard Mr. Darden stand up and tell you his theory of how this happened. The theory is only good until the facts come along and makes clear to you what actually took place. And so we think that if you keep an open mind, you'll be able to deal with
He
these
lives on
theories and
Endor.
apply the facts, which is your
It
job
doesn't make
as
sense.
the sole exclusive judges of the evidence in this case. Now, Mr. Darden, when he addressed you yesterday, spent a long period of time talking about Mr. OJ Simpson's marriage to Miss Nicole Brown Simpson. And he spent a lot of time, and he told you a number of things. He told you how, for instance, that this was like a terrible marriage and that all kind of bad things happened, and these people were together 17 years and was just terrible all 17 years. I think you'll find that's not exactly true.
I've been there, but it was only
Told
16.
you how Mr. Simpson was in, how do you describe it? An ugly mood on June 12th, 1994. Told you also that Mr. Simpson came there with some flowers. Well, we'll forgive him for that. Mr. Simpson didn't come with flowers. He's there. The testimony will be.
The simp came with flowers, and we'll forgive him for bringing flowers. Cold.
He was there. He left and went, got the flowers, and then came back. But let me try to show you graphically
Simp.
Mr. Simpson
Son.
with his daughter. And Your Honor, I'm now referring to a photograph, and I need to check with my colleagues, and I believe this will be defendants 1 if the court would allow, or A, whichever court would
Defense one.
Defense one. Thank you, Your Honor. This is a photograph of Mr. OJ Simpson and his sweet little daughter, Sydney Brooke Simpson, shortly after this concert at Paul Revere High School. This picture was taken, and I think you'll even see the date. You see 6/12/94. This
Criminy.
picture was taken by a
That's
Dr.
brutal.
Ron Fishman, who was at that particular recital. They were all friends. He will tell you that since Mr. Darden wasn't there, he's got his facts all wrong. OJ Simpson, according to the testimony, was not in any ugly mood. He talked to Ron Fishman. He was there to see his child. And you'll hear that he came back to Southern California from New York City, where he was on business. He was out of town almost all that week, specifically to try and come to this recital. He had to leave right after this to go to Chicago. He was already back east in New York. And Will produced a friend who told him, why don't you just stay back here? And Mr. Simpson told him, I missed my daughter's first communion because I was out of town on business. So I want to go to this dance recital. And that's what he did. Does that look like he's in an ugly mood to you there? And you'll see the two of them there at that point. Wherever we can, we're going to bring to you the facts versus their speculations and theories about this man. They don't know this man. The evidence, you will know him by the conclusion of this case.
Watch
So,
any
Mr. Darden
McDonald.
kind of apologizes at the end and
Jokes.
says,
They're great.
this isn't character assassination. You know, when somebody says that, who said it was character assassination? Because he knew that's exactly what it was. So at the very end, when he said it wasn't character assassination, that's exactly what he had done for an hour.
Hey, Melissa.
OJ Simpson. He's not charged with any domestic violence. This is a murder case. And in their pursuit to win, they're trying to dredge up some theory to give you a motive, because they don't have a motive for this and these particular crimes. And who's to say?
See, even Marsha is paying attention to him. Even Marsha Clark sort of looking like skeletal there, but even she is paying attention to what he is saying.
For this and these particular crimes. And who's to say that those four men we saw running from the area of 875 hadn't followed Mr. Ron Goldman there, as opposed to looking for Mr. Nicole Brown Simpson? Can they?
This is the Karen look. Excuse me, counsel. This is the I'm gonna talk to you. I'm gonna talk to the manager. I want the manager. I want corporate's number. And this is the you better not fucking interrupt me again, pal. Look on the face. But just stopping here to do the midstream brief grift. I've got 204 viewers here now, but only a little over 100 likes. So hey, come on, half of you aren't doing your job. Get down there, hit that like button, push us up to 200 likes. That's simple. It takes 0 seconds to go down there. Just click, boom, done. If you haven't subscribed and you've been watching this is what we're going to be doing this like once a week, once every couple of weeks, just hitting some highlights. We're not going to watch the entire 9-month trial. We'll hit some highlights. So if this is what you like, if you like other legal things, and you go down there and hit that subscribe button. I would be pleased to have you here. If you really want to be dedicated, join the membership, but any member joining the membership or not, you're always welcome into the Vice Squad here. We have the greatest damn chat on the entire internet. So welcome to it. I hope you enjoy it. And again, if you want to make sure I read something like Flux has done here, the best way to make sure I see your comment and read it and answer it or comment on it is to do a super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat, Flux. No wonder the jury took 4 hours. This is a train wreck, and this is what, the second day? Yeah, pretty much. This is day 2. And the prosecution's already getting crushed just in opening statements. You shouldn't be crushed in opening statements. You should be going, okay. When the prosecution finished, you should be saying, well, that sounds reasonable to me, which I don't think we were doing, because he was like, okay, they're arguing. But this time he wasn't violent. That time he wasn't violent. They argued. They had a bad relationship. They argued a lot. He saw her banging some other dude through the windows. And he said, what did he say? He said some naughty things. That's literally what they said. He comes into the house when his ex-wife is banging some other dude and said naughty things. But then I didn't walk away from the prosecution going, they have a really good point, which is what you should be doing. And then the defense stands up and you should at least go, well, they have a really good point too. Let's see how the evidence presents itself in this case. But here is just a total crushing from the beginning, where Johnny Cochran is already making it look like the prosecution has no case whatsoever. It's a train wreck from day one for the prosecution. Juan, thank you so much. Should the DA have waved the white flag at this point? I think so. Well, they've got to try to get the conviction. They could have just done a better job. I think if they would have had better prosecutors, more experienced prosecutors, and had presented the evidence in a better way, they could have easily got a conviction, I think. But they didn't. Well, shit. So again, yeah, that's the deal. To be sure, and as you see, I'm paying as much attention as I can to the chat. But when I'm doing things, when I'm making comments, when I'm watching the video, I miss a lot in the chat. But then when the super chat comes up, it like flashes in my peripheral vision with a big color. So I see it, but that's the surefire way to get something read or answered. You don't have to, no minimum requirement for chat. So with that in mind, let's make sure we keep hitting that like button as we go through, as you come in, as you leave, whatever, and then come back later after and just leave some comment. So it's engagement with the YouTube police. And they say, oh, wow, people are engaging with him after the live stream. So let's promote him. We need to get this stream going. We have 24,605 members now. Some way, somehow, my goal is to get to 25,000 subscribers in the next 3 weeks. I'm going to try somehow to get 400 more subscribers in the next 3 weeks so that on the 7th, on October 7th, when we do the next F It Friday stream, we can have a 25,000 25,000 subscriber blowout on that day. So mark your calendars. October 7th is the F It Friday drink stream. Woo! So I hope that we can make that a 25,000 member party as well. That would be awesome. So I'm hitting it hard here on my channel. I'm trying to grift my way into other people's channels and trying to have other guests on my channel just because I want to hit that 25,000 subscriber mark in the next 3 weeks so we can go completely off the hook on October 7th. With that out of the way, let's jump back in. Let's see what this is all about. Let's watch the white guy try to smack down the black guy in court here and see how it goes. With this look, I want to talk to the manager and I'll cut you look on his face. Let's see how this all goes down.
I hadn't followed Mr. Ron Goldman there, as opposed to looking for Mr. Nicole Brown Simpson. Can they?
Counsel. Your Honor, I interject once again on the grounds previously stated. This is argumentative. This is not a recitation of evidence. We've gone beyond the normal scope of opening statement.
All right, the objection's overruled at this time.
Now sit the
Thank
fuck
you,
down.
Thank you.
Now say it again because he interrupted you.
Got a little sidetracked there. Let me see. I think I was.
Boom. Again, as you're saying, the third time they've been interrupted. Just cause third opening objection. Yeah. And all three of them have been slapped down. And so now if I was a juror, I would be getting pissed at the prosecution. What are you doing? You're doing something you shouldn't be doing, obviously, because the judge doesn't want to hear it. And then he gets to mocked Marcia. Now he gets to mock this guy for the second fucking time. Gets to do that second. All right, yeah, that's all right. Let's go and talk about this again.
Thank you.
Got a little sidetracked there. Let me see. I think I was indicating to you, who's to say, based upon the facts in this case and the evidence, those four men,
And you see,
Marianne Gertges will
you
testify
get to
about,
say it
hadn't
again.
followed Mr. Ron Goldman to that location. Another thing that happened yesterday that is not true that they told you. Ms. Clark told you that Mr. Ron Goldman checked out of work. He was going to come over and do a favor for Ms. Nicole Brown Simpson
I bet he was.
to bring the glasses, and she described for you how he was dressed. I think she said with some white shirt and black pants or whatever, that he then came over to the residence. You saw those pictures as terrible as they were. He was in some jeans and some kind of shoes that are far different. And the evidence will be he went home, dropped off a book, changed clothes before he came to Nicole Brown Simpson. But the reason that you weren't told those facts is because it's important they keep this 10-15 time. They've got to keep everything squashed in there so they can tell you, oh, we had plenty of time to commit this crime. When we conclude today, you're going to see there was no time to commit this crime. And so
There's no time to commit the crime.
So-called character assassination or whatever. What I'd like you to do, as with all of the evidence in this case, is to keep an open mind till you've heard both sides. They may try to bring out incidents about this marriage. And these people did divorce in 1992. And unfortunately, in our society, there are far too many divorces. People don't always get along. And we sometimes get divorced. Some of you probably got divorced. And it's unfortunate when that happens. But I'd like you to keep an open mind. But I think perhaps the most important thing about this whole area is this as a response to Mr. Darden. There is an expert in the United States whose name is Dr. Lenore Walker.
Hey, let's talk about prepping. Yeah, damn, Johnny really is one of the smoothest talkers. Hey, welcome. Let's talk about prepping. Good to have you here. If anybody, any of you are not acquainted with Let's Talk About Prepping, go visit his site and see what you think and give him a subscribe.
She's, by all accounts, the #1 expert in America on the field of domestic violence.
So, he's just laying this shit out cold. They're going to talk about DNA evidence and the PCR test. Well, we have the Nobel Prize winning dude that invented the PCR test as our expert. They're going to talk about domestic violence. Well, we have the #1 domestic violence expert in the United States on our side. They're just crushing them with just mentioning their witness, their expert witnesses.
The mother of the battered woman syndrome. Now, they didn't talk about this yesterday, but Lenore Walker will be a witness for the defense. And I want to talk to you about her and her testimony because I think it'll be relevant as we talk about Mr. Darden and what he has to say on this area. We know that Mr. Darden is not an expert in this area. He's a lawyer conveying.
We've already had the Chewbacca defense today.
He wasn't there. Dr. Lenore Walker, this #1 expert in America, perhaps in the world, in this concept, has seen and interviewed and tested Mr. Simpson. She hasn't concluded all the testing yet, but she will testify to you about the results of those tests when she's completed. But she has and does have some feelings about this case and about Mr. Darden's remarks. In fact, as an expert, she's permitted to watch Mr. Darden, and she watched him yesterday. And she was kind enough to share with me last night what her thoughts were about this theory.
Here we go. Here's #4. Here's #4. Male Karen is just getting ready to give the #4. Wait, we don't want to hear what she said about yesterday's opening arguments. We don't want to hear. Please don't let him say what the #1 leading expert on domestic abuse and violence in America said about Chris Darden's take on domestic violence in this case. Wow. Yeah. And it goes just about, no spoilers.
As an expert, she's permitted to watch Mr. Darden, and she watched him yesterday. And she was kind enough to share with me last night what her thoughts were about this theory. I'm going to tell what the evidence is going to be.
All right, Mr.
He's going to offer to the jury Ms. Walker's feelings about my specific comments yesterday. My opening statement was not evidence, Your Honor. Ms. Walker ought to confine her opinions to the evidence in the case. And this is argumentative, and it's been argumentative.
Objections overruled.
Thank you. Dr. Walker.
That's a man who did not want to sit down. And she's gonna talk shit about my opening statement. You can't let him do that. Sit down, counsel. Oh, damn. That's number 4. Well, we could say number 5 because 2 lawyers got involved in that one. We'll say this. Like Flux is saying, just shut up. It hurts. It sucks. It's painful. But the jury has already been told that the shit coming out of Johnny Cochran's mouth, literally none of it is evidence. They've already been told that. No matter how much it hurts, I mean, unless it's something ridiculously egregious, let it go. Don't interrupt them. Now, if that's the 4th time they've interrupted this and the 4th time they've been swatted down, and the jury cannot but help think that they're just a bunch of fuckwits at this point. They're wasting time. They're trying to do shit that they shouldn't be doing because the judge isn't taking any of it. They are hurting their own cases by continually interrupting like this. Ugh. Let's watch Chris hate to sit down again. The
statement was not evidence, Your Honor. Ms. Walker ought to confine her opinions to the evidence in the case. And this is argumentative, and it's been argumentative.
Objections overruled.
Fuck. Dr. Walker, along with a number of us in the courtroom when Mr. Darden was speaking yesterday, felt that it's offensive to women to say that they never had a job.
This is argument.
All right.
They win one. They win one. Turtle says, "Good morning. Is it 1997? No, it's 1995." All right. So give one for Chris. Chris gets an argumentative evidence in here.
In the courtroom when Mr. Darden was speaking yesterday,
Evidence objection.
Felt that it's offensive to women to say that they never had a job.
This is argument.
All right. Very well. You're right, Your Honor. And let me rephrase
She
that.
was going to testify as to her analysis of Mr. Simpson or what her testimony is going to be. That's one thing. Commentary upon Mr. Darden is something else.
You're right. You're
Thank
absolutely right about that. Let me see if
Thank
I can
you.
restate that in a positive way, Your Honor. With regard to Mr. Darden's statements yesterday, you recall when Mr. Darden said that Nicole Brown Simpson never held a job, and he wanted to paint this picture for her for being, totally under control and being controlled by OJ Simpson and under his thumb and that sort of thing. Well, I think that some of us would feel that somebody who raises 2 children, who's an excellent mother, that's a pretty major job, being a homemaker. And we'll talk about whether or not Nicole Simpson was a Barbie doll that one could just make in their own mode. Because even in Darden's statement, he said this was a strong, tough lady. I think you'll find that's what the evidence is going to be. But with regard to this whole aspect of battering, in this case, let me say up front that Mr. Simpson is not proud at all of the fact that he and his wife got into an altercation and she was struck on January 1st, 1989. He's not proud of that. In fact, in the course of this evidence, you're going to see perhaps 3 letters that he wrote apologizing to his wife. But what Mr. Darden and what the evidence hasn't shown you so far was that from 1989, January 1st, 1989, they made a big thing out of that. From that day forward to the present date, there's no evidence that OJ Simpson ever struck his wife again. Now, you should never strike your wife. But even when he made a mistake on January 1st, 89, he paid his debt for that.
I'm 1 year older than you.
And he pled nolo contendere. He pled no contest for that. He was sentenced to community service and he paid his debt. Now they want to retry that, I suppose. They don't tell you that. There's not any touching after that. In fact, OJ Simpson did something else. After that incident, he was so contrite that he had a prenuptial agreement with Nicole Brown Simpson. So if they got a divorce, what her share would be. And he went and he had his lawyer put in writing, which was later signed by her, that if I ever strike you again, the prenuptial agreement is voidable. And until the date of her death, that agreement was never made void or voidable. Now, those are the facts. And so when Dr. Walker comes and testifies to you, she will talk about the fact that life-threatening violence usually precedes a homicide incident. And she does not find that in this case. She will, I believe, testify that according to the National Institute of Justice, approximately 2.5 million women are battered in this country every year. An intolerable situation. Statistics indicate, however, that between 1,200 and 4,000 of those women are killed. That's 1,200 to 4,000 of the 2.5 million battered. Dr. Walker will testify that it is impossible to use these statistics to prove that anybody who allegedly batters becomes a murderer. You might liken it to an example of smoking. Somebody may get lung cancer.
53.
The fact they get lung cancer may mean they smoke and may not. But if you smoke, I can't automatically predict you're going to get lung cancer. And so that this is not a predictable science, according to the lady who's the mother of this particular area. That although domestic violence is a very, very serious problem in this country, the level of violence in this case, the pattern, is atypical. Atypical means untypical of those relationships where a lethal incident often occurs. For instance, stalkers don't go all across the United States working, doing commercials, shooting movies, having a new girlfriend, going out with their life, doing all the things you're going to find this evidence is about. They don't have a new girlfriend by the name of Paula Barberi, who you've been very serious about from the time from April of 1992 to April of 1993 until Nicole Brown Simpson asked to reconcile and get back together. She did it in this way. She sent to Mr. Simpson, among other things, a video of their marriage, a video of the birth of their children, accompanied by a long letter spelling out how much she wanted to get back with this family. I think you'll find that's not stalking. Mr. Simpson's response was, we've had problems in the past. I have a girlfriend now. I'm happy. Let's take our time about this. But she pursued. She followed up on that. She pursued. She wanted to move back to Rockingham. She didn't like the housekeeper there. She wanted him to fire her. Michelle is her name. And ultimately, she got into an altercation and struck Michelle. He didn't want to fire Michelle. Ultimately, Michelle did leave after being struck. It was her who pursued this in May of 1993 to May of 1994. When Darden talked to you yesterday, he didn't mention that. We will conclusively prove that to you so that when Dr. Walker talks to you about stalkers demonstrate obsessive behavior that concentrates on controlling the woman at all times and is inconsistent with making a new life, beginning a new relationship with a woman such as Paula Barberi, traveling away from home on business assignments. All of those things go against any idea of stalking that they would have you believe in this case. Dr. Walker will also tell you that there's a major, major, major difference between a wealthy person who gives gifts, someone who uses material possessions to gain power and control. And so the prosecution would have you believe that if Mr. Simpson gives Nicole Brown Simpson a gift, it's going to be bought and paid for. Nothing could be further from the truth. Let me give you an example of the testimony that will come out in this case. Before Mr. Simpson ever got married to his wife, he bought her condominium in San Francisco and paid $500,000 for it and gave it to her free and clear in her name so she could have money up to $3,000 a month. He never, ever saw any of that money, wanted any of that money. There were no strings attached. This is before they got married. And later on in this discussion, I'm going to talk to you about what I call his circle of benevolence. Those who have come within the ambit and sphere of OJ Simpson and his philanthropic largesse, what he's done for him. And there are many other things. This $500,000 condo, free and clear, he then gave her some more money to buy the condo on Bundy. These are all her own separate things while they're still separated. He asked for no control. She had her own bank accounts. He gave her $4,000 a month for food at the house.
I'd like a $4,000 a month food budget. That would rock.
And he paid all of the bills when they were together. Let me talk about this circle of benevolence while we're on it right now. It extended not just to Miss Nicole Brown Simpson, but to her family, to Mr. Lou Brown. He helped him become a Hertz licensee at the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Beach for 7 years. The sisters, Dominique, he paid the tuition for Dominique for a couple of years at USC till she dropped out. Paid the tuition for Tanya, the other sister, I think, for San Diego State for a year or so till she dropped out. There's a cousin, Rolf Bauer, who worked for 7 years, Mr. OJ Simpson's chicken franchise, Pioneer Chicken franchises. The mother, Juditha, was a travel agent. He gave her his business and encouraged his friends to do likewise.
This is the Johnny Depp was a good guy defense.
This man had a great relationship with his in-laws. He did wonderful things for them. Took them all on trips, paid their way, took them all out to dinner. They'd go to Hawaii and Cabo San Lucas. This is the same man that Mr. Darden was talking to you about. Mr. Darden says that she never worked. OJ Simpson encouraged her to become a decorator. She became a decorator. He helped her get jobs from his friends. She redecorated the Rockingham house to the tune of $1.5 million. And he paid her. He paid his own wife a fee to decorate the house. This man that Darden was talking about, this man gives $5,000 every year to the Angel City Links, an inner city Black organization. And the condition of his gift every year is it has to be anonymous, that he doesn't want to know he does that. The thing that he's perhaps proudest about are these next two things I'm going to tell you about. Number one is his mother, Eunice Simpson there. As soon as he was able, he bought her a house. She still lives in that house in San Francisco. This is a man, 47 years old, who grew up in the poor areas of San Francisco, in Potrero Hill, but he never forgot. Became rich and famous, but he didn't forget.
See, listen to his vocal inflections. This is exactly what was missing from the prosecution. You're getting involved. You're getting excited. You're getting caught up in this. He has emotion. He's bringing this out of you. He's preaching to you. He's hauling you in. He's bringing it to you. He's wanting you to get involved in the story. He's building it up to the climax. But, Christopher Darden was just like, abuse, murder.
So that to this day, he buys the uniforms for the kids at the Potrero Hill gymnasium where the kids go to work out. He still does that, even right now, even while in his jail cell, bought his mother's house. You'll hear about those kinds of things. And the second thing he's most proud about is that he had a child who drowned at a young age. That's always a tragedy. You hear evidence about that. And the pronounced effect that it had upon him. And after that, he became involved in all these kind of pediatric endeavors. And he has participated in raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for Camp Good Time, for kids who have cancer. He's very proud about that. There's testimony and evidence about that. People who know him,
thank you,
not people who
Flux.
speculate about him, will come in and testify.
Planet of the Apes is an amazing film. The original ones,
Dr.
not the
Walker
new ones.
tells
They
you,
suck, just like this
for a
prosecution.
wealthy person to give gifts doesn't mean you're exercising any control. One of the sisters needed some money, up to $5,000, and he gave it to the sister and her boyfriend. And the condition was, don't tell Nicole. It's a lot of control, isn't it? So when you hear about theories I'm going to tell you about the facts. So you'll hear from Dr. Walker, and you'll hear ultimately.
Beautiful line. That's a great line from the prosecutor. The prosecution is going to tell you, because they kept saying they kept mentioning their theories. The prosecution is going to tell you about theories. We're going to tell you about facts. Beautiful, beautiful, and powerful line.
About the battery of tests. I think you'll find that she will say that in looking at OJ Simpson and interviewing him, and looking at him at this point, she finds no evidence of antisocial personality disorder. I think you'll find that becomes very important in this case. And understand that this is no Janie come lately. This is the leading lady in America who testifies in these kind of cases where a battered woman shoots and kills her husband. So this is an area where obviously you get a chance to see her qualifications and her ability as she goes about this. Now, back to Mr. Darden's discussion. It tells you a number of things that I'd like to address, at least some of them, with you now. We've already covered the so-called ugly mood by showing you the photograph. We've covered the aspect of the flowers, because Mr. Simpson did get flowers, but he went out and got those flowers. We'll cover the aspect, let me talk to you about Mr. Simpson at that particular recital. I've told you how he came back to California specifically to go to that recital. That he'd come in to Paul Revere at about 5 o'clock and saw his ex-wife. He had to get his ticket and take his ticket back to the person at the door. That his daughter was 30 or something on the program. You've been to those programs where your child is going to come up and she's like, there's probably 100 people there and your child is like 99. You have to be very interested until you get there. So this was like 30 something. She was at the very end. But as all parents, you kind of sit there and you're really proud of the youngsters and you do that. As the program was going, he remembered that he didn't have any flowers. So when he first got there and he was sitting, he was 2 seats away from his ex-wife, Miss Nicole Brown Simpson. Wasn't staring at anybody. Wasn't glaring at anybody. Wasn't jealous about anything. In fact, you'll hear the conversation he had with Ron Goldman, who was still in the group. There was a group of them who ran around together in Brentwood. And OJ Simpson was commiserating with Ron Goldman about his problems he was having. Please forgive me. Ron Fishman, excuse me. I heard those sounds. I'm sorry about that. Thank you. Ron Fishman. He's the man who took this picture here. He was talking about his problems with Cora Fishman and the group that ran around together. The testimony will be that he was saying, I'm glad to be out of it. I'm back with Paula. And was he back with Paula? Yes, he's back with Paula. The night before this trial is over, we'll have another picture, but this picture will do for now. By the way, this is Mr. Douglas is going to help us because they're from graphics and things. Hope you'll bear with us. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Your Honor, can you see this picture? We'll call this, this is.
I thought we had agreed that it would be defense 1, 2, 3, 4.
Got to get their evidentiary ducks in a row here.
But we're going to have so many, Mrs. Robertson. I thought we agreed on this. For now, we'll call it defense 2. And Mrs. Robertson will explain to me the error of my ways at lunchtime.
And right there, we can fast forward through some of there. Are we there? Yeah, we can fast forward through some of these things here.
Benefit of Israel, $25,000.
All right, now just before we go, here's a quick clip from the that I thought was amusing from the movie In a Relationship.
Now, this is where OJ Simpson and Nicole's daughter had a dance recital on the night of June 12, 1994. You remember from the court case?
I don't know why I clipped that. It just kind of caught my attention, so I clipped that. Let's go back to the testimony.
Fundraiser. I think $25,000 a plate, by the way, for to the benefit of Israel. And that's O.J. Simpson there. Now, that night, on Saturday, June 11th, he went with his girlfriend, Paula Barberi, who had picked him up at the airport on Friday evening, June 10th, when he came back from working in the East from New York. They spent that time together, and they went out Saturday evening. And so this picture, again, is graphic evidence of O.J. Simpson and who he really is, it seems to us. As I said, there is another picture of Paula Barberi with him there that we don't have yet, but that we will. Now, Mr. Darden talked a lot about
Well, thank you, Becca Smith.
Simpson being weak and that he exercised all this control over and picked her friends. The evidence will show that Miss Nicole Brown Simpson is a very strong, independent woman, very attractive, and an excellent and wonderful mother. But the one thing they never fought over and never had any arguments about were those children. They both mutually loved those beautiful children, and that was very, very important, it seems, to both of them. That she picked and chose her own friends. That O.J. Simpson or no one else could tell her who her friends were to be. She had whatever friends she wanted. She did whatever she wanted. He tells you about 2 incidents where he alleges there's stalking. Let me tell you the facts and the true facts about those incidents.
Hey, Vicky T, welcome.
With witnesses.
Again, backed up with witnesses.
Cellini, who owns a restaurant on the west side out on Pico. He's a good friend of O.J. Simpson's. They went out to dinner one night. And while out to dinner, they became aware of Miss Nicole Brown Simpson and their party. This is the time when they were separated. And they had an agreement generally that if one or the other came in while they were there, the person who was there first would leave or whatever. There wouldn't be any problems. The incident regarding Joe Stellini had nothing to do with Miss Nicole Brown Simpson or her party.
It's not the jury, it's just my Bulldogs.
Frequent the same kinds of places. You'll hear from Joe Stellini, and you'll see it was not anything about any stalking. The other incident was about Metzaluna, I believe. It was an incident where they both were at this restaurant. Mr. Simpson's party had already been seated when he came in. And again, you'll hear from these parties who will tell you that these were not any stalking incidents. If you live in Brentwood and there are restaurants, hot restaurants in that area, and you go out to dinner a lot, you're going to run into each other. And there was no hostility, no stalking, no jealousy, no nothing. And so he tries to paint O.J. Simpson as a jealous man. Let me tell you what the evidence is going to be about that. You heard about this incident of Keith Zlomowitz. I'm sure as a witness who's going to be called. Mr. Darden described it. Remember, he said yesterday, well, he didn't punch out Nicole and he didn't punch out Keith, or words to that effect. He certainly didn't. What happened was Mr. Simpson, in one of these incidents, had seen his ex-wife out. They went out dancing afterwards. He stopped by our house afterwards to try to talk to her. He would go by and woo her on occasion. The evidence will be that when they first broke up, he was advised in January of 1992 that she wanted a divorce. Between January and April of 1992, it was hard on him. Knowing somebody for 17 years, he didn't want to lose her. He likes family. He learned that from his mother, and he's got this close-knit family. And he likes that. He loved his children. He didn't want to lose his wife. But something happened in April of 1992. As soon as he became aware that she had a boyfriend, from that point on, his interest changed, and he went on. And when he saw what he saw with Keith and Mrs. Simpson, he then went on with his life with Paula. That's when it started, in April of 1992. And so what happened was he wasn't peering in any windows. He came to the front door to try to see his wife. And he looked in and he saw his wife making love to a gentleman.
He wanted to say fucking. You know he wanted to say fucking. Look at his lips. He's like making love. Look at that. He wanted to say fucking. Those lips are making an F sound there. He caught himself. Johnny Cochran, I believe, almost said fucking in court.
peering in any windows. He came to the front door to try to see his wife.
He wanted to
He
say
looked
fucking.
in and he saw his wife making love to a gentleman on that couch. Now, according to Chris Darden, wouldn't you expect that he would just blow up, become ballistic? He went home. The evidence will be, he came back the next day to talk to Mrs. Simpson about the fact that the kids were upstairs and what he saw them doing, he didn't think would be appropriate. One of the kids came downstairs.
Makes sense to me. Flux, thank you so much for the super chat. Did you watch the Netflix show on this? Casting is amazing. Sarah Paulson is a better Marcia Clark than Marcia Clark. Just like IMDb, the cast is crazy. I haven't watched it yet. It's been on my to-do list, on my watch list for ages, but there's always something better to watch. But I'll try to give it a look. Notes on a plane. Oh, she definitely had whatever friend she wanted as he watched. Yeah, through the window. Cuck. The dogs are snoring, as someone pointed out earlier. Yeah, got the doggo snoring back there. All right, well, let's jump into this. Let's bring this on home here.
And so when he came back on the next day of this incident, he saw Keith, I think, sitting astride Miss Nicole Brown Simpson, giving her a massage or something in her shoulders.
Well, maybe not on the
OJ
sofa
Simpson
where the
talked
kids
to
can
both of
watch
them,
if they come out of their
shook
rooms.
Keith's hand, went on his way, and said essentially, look, I don't think you should be doing this in front of the kids or whatever. They didn't tell you that Keith Zlomowicz moved in with Nicole that summer. But OJ Simpson was back with Paula. Didn't bother him. He knew she was there, that Keith was there. Was he stalking? Was he jealous? Was that a rage? I think not. So, again, I want you to take these facts and look at them. But there's an even more painful incident, probably. It tells you that he's not jealous. He has a very close friend, somebody who's very near and dear to him. The evidence will show who had a relationship with Nicole Brown Simpson, because she told him so when they got back together, and this gentleman told him so. And it was hurtful, but he never said a harsh word to her or this gentleman. He didn't go ballistic. He didn't do any of those things. In fact, you know what he did? He let this gentleman get married at his Rockingham house after learning this gentleman had been intimate with his wife. That's what OJ Simpson did on that occasion.
Huge head, extremely loud, and uses the F word constantly. Sounds like me. There we go. I talked over the end there. Hang on just a quick second.
That's what OJ Simpson did on that occasion. Your Honor, may I put your name?
So they want to go up to the bench, talk about what they're going to talk about.
10-minute recess. Love the tie. Love the suspenders. All right. Let's take a 10-minute recess, ladies and gentlemen. If you'll just step back into the jury room, and we'll resume in 10 minutes. Apparently, the Public Information Office has received several comments that apparently jurors are visible in the reflection off of the bailiff cubicle there.
Yeah.
I have looked at the videotape. It does not appear apparent to me, but I only took about 30 seconds to look at it. We'll look into it at noon, but I just thought I'd let you, don't go away. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take hairspray so that it won't reflect, is what I'm going to do. But rather than have everybody move while I hairspray it, we'll.
That's an old school reflection solution. Spray it with hairspray.
All right, Deputy Magnero, let's have the jurors, please. And Mr. Cochran, I'll allow you to, if you want to slop over a couple of minutes there, but close to 12, conclude your thought. My guesses were, if I had to guess, that was the introduction.
I'm sorry, it'll be this afternoon. You're worried about witnesses? We're leaving at 3:30 today, Judge? Yeah. I'll make sure I finish before then. And I will, if that's all right. I'll, you know.
All right, here are the jurors. When, sir.
Where left off. To conclude those remarks about this friend, I think that speaks volumes about Mr. Simpson, his stability, his relationship with his ex-wife. I think the evidence will also show that in about May of 1992, Ms. Nicole Brown Simpson came over to the Rockingham house and said she'd found a boyfriend, somebody different than Keith. The incident was April of 1992, and asked Mr. Simpson for some advice. He, of course, knew at that point that it was over and he was back with Paula and went on with his life, as I said, until such time as in 1993, she decided she wanted to get back together.
Yes, he does.
Now, clear up.
That's Barry Sheck there. And there's Kardashian back there.
Being as accurate as I can.
It's Robert Kardashian.
Two incidents that they talked about. On the one incident involving the man Joe Stellini, that was at Mezzaluna. The other incident, the restaurant called Tryst. In both incidents, there was no problem, no fight. In fact, in the Tryst incident, I believe it was, with the Mezzaluna incident, Mr. Simpson went home with his wife that night. So that there was not any incident where they were stalking or fighting, anything like that. There was no obsessive behavior. I hope that put those in some kind of perspective.
Holly weird relationship.
Mr. Darden talked in his opening statement about a 1985 incident in which some damage was done to a vehicle. And as I understand it, the testimony will be there was not any incident in 1985 because Miss Nicole Brown Simpson was pregnant, had a C-section later in that year, and they didn't have any situation like that. They did have some discussion apparently maybe in 86 or in 84. There was some damage done to her car and she was not in that car. She was not struck on that occasion. So I think you'll find an incident of not great consequence. And Mr. Darden talked about the 1993 911 tape that you've heard so much about. And I think even he conceded yesterday that in that situation, although you could hear Mr. Simpson's voice, he was angry. Mr. Simpson never laid a hand on his wife, never called her a name. And I think the important thing about a trial is that finally you're going to get to hear all of this tape. And what you're going to hear, Mr. Darden didn't tell you this yesterday, is that there was a discussion on this 911 tape. And he alluded to the fact that Mr. Simpson couldn't get out of his mind what he'd seen back on April 1992. Well, now, first of all, most of us might have a problem getting that picture out of our mind, seeing your wife making love to someone else. But at any rate, this wasn't the reason for the argument. What had happened was, and the facts will be, that when they started trying to get back together again in 93, they had an agreement that they would take the pictures of their boyfriends and girlfriends out of the, you put them away, basically, which seemed to be a reasonable request. And there was a dispute because when Miss Brown Simpson would ever see Paula Barberi's picture, she was very upset about that. And Mr. Simpson, on this date, I believe, saw a picture of somebody that she had dated during the time they'd been separated. And he said, gee, what's fair for me would be fair for you. And they got into this conversation that went over a period of time. At some point, it was just a verbal conversation. It escalated and tempers flare. It sometimes happens with married couples. Doesn't make it right, but sometimes it happens. He came over to her house and he did, in fact, kick a French door. The evidence will be the door was already broken. He fixed it, but he never at any time struck his wife during this period of time. And what he was saying, at some point, she says, OJ, be quiet. What about the kids? And he says,
Welcome.
essentially, you weren't thinking about the kids and being quiet when you're on the couch with Keith.
Burn.
You'll hear that on the tape. So you
Burn.
put it in perspective. And the important point to make is that nobody was ever injured during this period of time. In fact, there is a tape recording and a transcript from some police officers
Now
who
he
came
kicked the
out
door.
and talked with these parties. And in that tape, you'll get a chance to hear what Ms. Brown Simpson thought about that incident. And they also talked to OJ, who waited there for him. He agreed to fix that door. And they went on with their lives. They went on and continued during that period of time to get along. This was the time they were back together. You should note that Mr. Simpson, because of how he's conducted his life and the things he's done in his life, has been able to amass some assets. Not bad for a young man, a spindly leg youth from San Francisco, who suffered with rickets, who had trouble walking, was cared for by his mother, who grew up to become the greatest running back in the history of the National Football League. And so because of that and his commercial endorsements and things, he's able to have several homes. He has a home in New York. And the evidence will be that in August of each year, because of his commitments with NBC, he would go and live in New York. And so he wouldn't try to control Miss Nicole Brown Simpson. I mean, she would do what she wanted to while he was here. Even during 93, he was living in New York from like August to like January, maybe after the Super Bowl or whatever, till August to January. He'd be back there at his New York house. He also had a house in Laguna Beach in Orange County. And one thing I forgot to tell you about the circle of benevolence. He assisted his wife in buying a condo in Laguna for herself, separate from his house. So when she was at Rockingham, she had 2 condos in her own name, one in Laguna, one in San Francisco, she's getting money from, and living at Rockingham. They didn't tell you about that. He also bought some property in Cabo San Lucas where he planned to build. All of the things that he was doing was about the family, like keeping the family together, like doing things with in-laws and with friends and with the children. So I think you'll hear evidence about the fact that he was away at great periods of time. And while I'm about that, let me tell you about the kind of schedule this man had. You won't be able to see
A murder schedule.
but at some point, hopefully we will. If you went back and looked at Mr. OJ Simpson's daily calendar from January to June of 1994, you'd find a man that in January was out of town and probably still living in New York almost every day. But he was out of New York because he was traveling. Some of you who know this is Super Bowl week, you can imagine that he was in Atlanta that week because that's what the Super Bowl was last year. That the evidence will be that this was a time that he and his wife were trying to make it, that he took some family members, the Browns from Germany, to the Super Bowl in Atlanta, paid for all of them, got them 50-yard seats, took them to all the big parties that are going on this week. He was again out of town during almost all of that particular month. If you looked at his calendar and you're able to be testimony that in February, he was spent a lot of time in Cabo San Lucas. He was in Nashville, in St. Louis, in Miami.
He was just too busy to do some murder and,
work.
you know.
Few days where you find he was even here in Los Angeles. You looked at March, you'd find that he was in New York. He was doing Bryant Gumbel's charitable golf tournament in Orlando, Florida. Back in New York again. He was all over the country doing various and sundry things. You got to the month of April.
Ain't nobody got time for
back in
murdering.
Cabo.
He's busy.
From there, he came back to Los Angeles. Then he went to Puerto Rico. Evidence will be that some of you know, he's an actor, a would-be actor, and that he made this movie Frogman during that period of time in Puerto Rico. Again, very much out of California. And in May, with the exception of some things that he came to do for his children. And by the way, again, talking about the kind of things that he would do at Rockingham. And you'll see this place at Rockingham. On May 22nd, we had a school picnic at Rockingham. We had a number of kids, and I think that's for the Sunshine Preschool. That is where his son Justin went. It was a fundraiser for this school. They have all these kids, and all the people would come to his house at Rockingham to raise money for the school. On May 22nd, he did that. And Nicole Brown Simpson was there.
I gotta take
Even
the
though
Browns
they
to
had
the Super
agreed in
Bowl.
May, earlier that
Gotta-
month in May, and he was now
Nice.
back with Paula, when Nicole Brown Simpson got sick the week of May 15th, 1994. She had pneumonia. OJ Simpson was the one who took her soup, who tried to nurse her back, to get her back on her feet, even though they agreed they weren't going to be together anymore.
I'm now using that as my euphemism for I have to
Your
go
testimony
I have to go take a
with regard
dump.
to that.
I have to take the Browns to the
And he
Super
continued,
Bowl.
of course, being in and out of town. In June of 1994, he had taken his two children, Sydney and Justin. And let me say something at this point. Mr. Simpson has two other children that he's equally proud of. The minors cannot be here, obviously, for obvious reasons. But he has two other children that he's equally proud of, and they're here in court today. And there's Arnell Simpson over there and
That's Arnell there.
Jason Simpson.
Yeah, that's
sitting
Jason.
between his two sisters, Carmelita Duro and Miss Shirley Baker, and the balance of the family. And you've met Miss Eunice Simpson already. So he, on May 5th, attended a pediatric AIDS affair. Again, his interest in children and AIDS and charitable work, along with Paula. And he took the two younger children. It was a real fine day. And that was on that Sunday. On that Tuesday, he left to go to Washington, D.C. Again, he left town. He had to work. On Wednesday, he was working for Hertz in Washington, D.C. On Thursday, he's in Connecticut, working again at one of his board meetings. He's on these various boards, some charitable, some profitable, hopefully. He was in Connecticut. On Friday and Thursday night, he was in New York with his friend Bender. And he'd work, and he'd try to play golf during these periods of time.
He's got these friends, Bender and Cato.
You recall I mentioned that Mr.
Yeah,
Bender,
Bender.
suggested you're going to be in Chicago on Tuesday
Futurama vibes going on.
or Monday night. Stay over.
Well, I don't know.
Came
Let's
home
go
for the
murder
reception.
somebody.
And when you see his calendar, you'll see it's planned all the way out, far beyond June, of course, of 1994. But it gives you a sense of this man, this man's life, what he'd been able to do with his life and with himself. I point out these things to you because I think as you look at all of the incidents that Mr. Darden talked about, it puts them into perspective. This is not a case about domestic abuse. It's a murder case. It's a murder case about who did these horrible crimes. That's going to be your decision. Not to think that O.J. Simpson is a bad guy or a good guy, for that matter, but to get a picture of him. I think that you'll agree with me that after you hear the facts, you'll have a clearer picture. Now, about we talked about the 1993 incident, I think we did.
We're kind of going down memory lane here, and I think this is a good strategy. You just beat the living hell out of the prosecution and their entire opening statement, and then once you have pounded them into the dirt, rather than just rubbing their nose in it, then you just say, okay, we've defeated them. Their arguments are all crushed, and we'll show you that because we have the best experts and the expert witnesses in the entire universe. Now, let me just tell you about my client. He's a great guy. He's a saint. He does everything perfectly well and wonderfully. And you just build up your client. You crush the prosecution, build up your client. And while we're here, Rosman Rand says, I think I remember you saying you don't have a Venmo because of a reason I can't remember, but Legal Mindset has a PayPal. I have a PayPal, but there's some reason that the PayPal won't link up with my Korean bank. I think it has something to do with how my name is on PayPal versus how it is on my bank statement. So I kind of got to work that out with the bank and then hopefully be able to cash out things on PayPal. But that's why I don't actively use it right now. Notes on Q. What evidence was the winning factor in the civil trial? Levi says nutshell it. I didn't really pay much attention to the civil trial, but I think the main reason he lost the civil trial was because it was pretty evident that he pulled a gun on a dude, stuck it in his face, and held him captive in the hotel room. I think it was pretty cut and dried. But again, I didn't pay much attention to it, so that's about as nutshell as I can get. Prototypo, I know what I'll do. I'll write a book about if I did it, and that will surely prove my innocence. Yeah, that publishing the book, If I Did It, was really, really stupid. But due to the prescription against double jeopardy, he literally could have called that book How I Really Did It Now That I've Been Acquitted, and they couldn't do a damn thing about it. So yeah, writing the book was stupid PR, but literally he could have just come out and said, ha ha ha, I did it, and here's how I really did it. And it would have been the same thing, basically. And DJ, I came to the conclusion that he did it and the police framed him. Both things can be true. Absolutely. That is absolutely possible. And that's why I'm saying whether he did it or not isn't the important thing in this. The important thing is, did the prosecution prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it so as to take away a man's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for the rest of his life? Did they meet that burden of proof? Both of those things can be true. And I think something like that may have happened. I don't personally think he did it. I think he knew about it and or maybe was watching it happen. Maybe he was one of those 4 guys. I don't know. But I mean, because I think if he's going to take out a strapping young man in his 20s and a woman quietly and only come away with a tiny little mark on his knuckle, is pretty good for an arthritic 46 at the time, 46-year-old. So I don't know if he actually committed it, but I do firmly believe the police framed him. It's the classic story of, we know we've got him, we know we can prove he was involved in this murder, but we really want to make sure the lawyers can't find any way around it. So let's just kind of bolster the evidence a little bit. Let's just add a few little details to the evidence to sort of seal the deal. And that's when things start going pear-shaped. Then I saw Eric Hunley's show and learned about a man we've never heard about. Who's the man we've never heard about? His son? That's one of the speculations. But I haven't seen Eric's deal on it. Well, alrighty then. We have about 15 more minutes here, and then we will wrap this up for today. So while we're still here, while we're paused, we have exactly as many people as we have likes, and I bet the 195 of you that are here, maybe a tiny fraction of you were here when we started. So get down there, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so. We're doing good. Again, I really desperately want to get 400 new subscribers in the next 3 weeks. So when I do it's after 2 hours now, so sweet. So we can say whatever we want. October 7th, my Fuck It Friday stream, where you guys just pay me to drink way too much. We just booze it up. And I really want that to coincide with my 25,000 subscribers so we can just go completely off the fucking hook. So all of you tell your friends about me. Alrighty, let's get back to the final 18 minutes of this part of the defense opening statements. And go.
And I think those are the main incidents that Mr. Darden talked about. One thing I wanted to point out.
We've got to stop the one-armed man from The Fugitive. True case, by the way. The one-armed man, you've seen the Harrison Ford movie. Maybe you saw the old TV series from way back in the day. A doctor comes home, finds his wife murdered, and everybody thinks he did it. He becomes a fugitive and runs away, and he says that the murder that he was, he saw a one-armed man fleeing the scene. That's a true story case. And that doctor that was put on trial in the actual real story was defended by F. Lee Bailey, this man right here. So the one-armed man defense in the actual real case of The Fugitive was tried by Mr. F. Lee Bailey. He was the lawyer for the doctor who said that the one-armed man murdered his wife. That formed the basis of the TV show and movie The Fugitive. Yes, DJ says The Fugitive was a great show, and that's The Fugitive's lawyer, F. Lee Bailey. So cool. There you go, Prototype. Bet you didn't know that, huh? Whoa, exactly. You were coming up with the one-armed man. You didn't know that. That's his lawyer right there. That was the one-armed man from The Fugitive's defense lawyer, Mr. F. Lee Bailey.
point out to you is that there will be, I believe, testimony that as these parties got a divorce, as so often happens, Miss Nicole Brown Simpson had her deposition taken.
Wait, what?
And she made a statement in that deposition with regard to whether or not he'd ever physically struck her after the 89 incident. It'll be interesting to hear what that is. That this Mark
But only with
Furman
one arm.
becomes even more relevant in this case as we go along and discuss it, because he was the officer who had supposedly responded, he says, in 85. There's evidence that the incident involving the bat and the Mercedes was not in 85 because she was pregnant. But he writes a report 4 years later in 89 saying he had an indelible impression of Mr. OJ Simpson and coming to that location. An indelible impression. So we'll have to pursue what that means in this report that he wrote about that incident some 4 years later and whether or not it was accurate. It was not done contemporaneously with the incident. Mr. Darden also said to us that this was not a tabloid prosecution. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? He used those words, didn't he? He said, first of all, this wasn't character assassination, which we now know it was. And he says it's not a tabloid prosecution. Well, I think the evidence will be that after this book that you've heard about from his so-called friend Faye Resnick came out, it's when the people started getting all these witnesses who wanted to come forward, talk about these incidents. So whether or not it's a tabloid prosecution is not for me to say, it's going to be for you to say. Let me say this about Faye Resnick.
Counsel,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Go
Your
ahead, sir.
Honor, once again,
I'm sorry to interrupt you for the sixth time. But again, he should have interrupted a little while ago. He should have interrupted a few minutes ago when they were saying, well, they said it wasn't character assassination, but it was. It wasn't a tabloid deal, but it was. That's when he was being argumentative. That's when they should have objected. But what do they object? Well, they shouldn't have objected anyway. They should just let it go. But here we go. Number 6. You're 1 for 5 here, pal. Do you really want to do this?
His so-called friend Faye Resnick came out. It's when the people started getting all these witnesses who wanted to come forward, talk about these incidents. So whether or not it's a tabloid prosecution,
Even he's not sure he wants to stand
It's
up.
going to be for you to say. Let me say this about Faye Resnick.
counsel,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Go ahead,
Your
sir.
Honor, once again, my objection has been previously noted.
I caution you, Mr. Cochran, about what you're just about to launch into, because that person's not on the witness list. And when you say, let me tell you about somebody, I'm concerned.
This,
You're right. There's a possibility that.
All right, I
Well-
think we should hear these objections at the sidebar.
Okay.
However,
And
Mr.
I tell you, let's do it without the recording. I think.
Please.
So this is Judge Ito warning him that even though the objection was it's argumentative, Ito saying it's not argumentative yet, but I know where you're going with this, and you're on very, very, very thin ice. So he wants to go up and talk about it to see if, I mean, clearly he's going to tell the judge what he wants to say, and the judge will decide whether it's argumentative or whether it should be let in. Weak knife hands game. Yeah, you need the strong knife hands. Come on, Flux. Show us your knife hands, Flux. We know Flux, veteran Flux has some knife hands. Oops, we wound up the volume here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. I talked just briefly about this witness, Faye Resnick. And you may or may not hear from her. She's on our witness list. There's a possibility. We may call her for a number of reasons because
Object, Your Honor. There's only a possibility.
Counsel overruled.
See, Judge Ito is getting pissed now. Anytime the judge says, counsel overruled, the judge is starting to get pissed now with these interruptions. He wants to get this thing wrapped up. He wants to get these opening statements out of the way. And now Darden is fucking around and he's annoying the judge. You've succeeded in doing the literal one thing, the absolute one thing you do not want to do.
we may call her for a number of reasons because
Object, Your Honor. There's only a possibility.
Counsel overruled.
The reason why I think the evidence will show, will be relevant to you, is that on or about June 3rd of 1994, Faye Resnick, who had had a long-time relationship with a Dr. Christian Reichardt, whom we will definitely be calling, they'd been living together for a long time. And because of her drug usage, because of the fact she was freebasing cocaine, he put her out. They broke up. It was one of these parties.
I just like how you dropped the freebasing
use.
cocaine line.
Been
Sorry,
together for a long
sorry if
time.
I shattered everyone's eardrums there. I mean, just to casually drop because she's freebasing cocaine line out of the blue. Oh, I'm sorry, that was funny.
Part, whom we will definitely be calling. They'd been living together for a long time. And because of her drug usage, because of the fact she was freebasing cocaine, he put her out literally. They broke up. She was one of these parties who they ran in this circle out there in Brentwood. And when she was put out on June 3rd, which I think was a Friday, she then moved over and lived with Nicole Brown Simpson because they were friends. They would go out at night. These were all friends. The evidence will be these ladies would go out 2, 3, 4 nights a week and stay out till 5 o'clock in the morning. Nobody was controlling these women. There's a group of them, and you'll hear about it. They go out dancing. They do whatever they would do. And we know Faye Resnick was using drugs in this period of time. It got so bad, the evidence will be that on June 8th, 1994.
Isn't Faye Resnick, didn't she do a brief stint on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills? I believe that was her. Yeah, because that was one of my vices. That was one of my TV vices a while ago, was the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
They had what we call an intervention, that Nicole and Kristen Reichardt and her former husband, Paul Resnick, all got together to try and convince her that she had to go into a drug treatment facility called Exodus. And on the 8th of June.
Excuse me, counsel. I'm sorry once again.
Number 7. Here we go.
Your Honor, you had asked us or given us leave to address these issues.
Overruled. Please be
In a
seated.
noon hour.
he didn't. Judge isn't even letting him get this statement out. Yeah, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. That was one of my things. I tell you, like Real Housewives of New Jersey and Real Housewives of Beverly Hills are my thing. I'm from Salt Lake area, so like the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I haven't got into it yet. I know I need to because they're all starting to go to jail and it might not be on much longer. But with the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, the first episode, they go to a bar, Lake Effect. That is a fucking awesome bar. That's like one of my favorite bars on planet Earth. But anyway, yeah, I know things like that because I like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills to the point where I went to Vanderpump's restaurant in Caesar's Palace when I was on vacation. Anyway, yeah, he's making. I lost track. Is this attempt 6 or attempt 7? I believe this is the 7th interruption. This is the 7th interruption, right? Well, and again, I just love the judge didn't even let him get it out. He was trying to say, you said we could talk about this during the lunch hour. And he's like, just sit the fuck down.
And her former husband, Paul Resnick, all got together to try and convince her that she had to go into a drug treatment facility called Exodus. And on the 8th of June.
Excuse me, counsel. I'm sorry once again. Your Honor, you had asked us or given us leave to address these issues.
Overruled. Please be
In a
seated.
noon hour.
Please be seated.
Very well.
Thank you.
Very well. I've been spanked. Shut
Goes
the fuck
into
up, counsel.
a drug treatment facility on June 8th. And she remains there, and she's there on June 12th. And I think you hear from the evidence that she is one of the people who calls Miss Nicole Brown Simpson on the night of June 12th, perhaps after 9 o'clock that particular night, from this drug treatment facility. We'll be talking about that and her role in this whole drama.
No.
To conclude, then,
Those housewives are
what I
why
tried
I'm
to
against
do
marriage.
in this opening statement is to lay out for you the fact that in almost everything you hear in this case, there are two sides.
The same at Caesar's Palace.
That as jurors, I'm sure you're not going to rush to judgment. But this should not be a case about character assassination. I hope you will keep an open mind until you hear all of the evidence as it relates to who Mr. Simpson is. Now, shifting our attention now to the discussion, the very able discussion of Miss Marcia Clark yesterday. It seemed to me as you...
So now that we've been pounding on Chris Darden for an hour and a half, let's talk about Marcia. Marcia. Let's talk about Marcia's opening.
Summarized what she had to say to you. That her argument broke down, well, it was argument at the end, but her opening statement broke down into a discussion of timeline and so-called evidence trails. Let me first of all talk to you about the concept of the timeline. We talked a little bit about that. And let me tell you what she didn't tell you about. And some of this we'll cover, so I won't be redundant. But there are witnesses like the lady who lived next door to Mr. Simpson. There's a Mr. Tom Lang that she knows about and didn't tell you about.
Tom
Who
Lang.
on this particular night, June 12th, 1994, was walking his dog on a street called Dorothy Street.
For Christ's sake,
Right
everybody's
down
just
the way
walking their dogs around the
from Mr.
murder
Nicole Brown
scene.
Simpson's condo at 875. That from his vantage point, just a short distance on the corner, he looked up and he saw a lady that he believes was Miss Nicole Brown Simpson, either embracing someone at a vehicle at the curb, and behind Miss Simpson, he saw a man that he described as a Hispanic or Caucasian, standing with his hands clenched, standing there looking as though he was angry. And he didn't know why this man was looking like this. And this is about 10 o'clock on June 12th, whether he was angry because Mr. Lang didn't know whether he was angry because his dog was loose or what. But again, this is what I expect his testimony to be. This is at 10 o'clock, and he sees a lady that he believes is Nicole Brown Simpson at that point. I talked to you briefly before about Ellen Aronson and Dan Mandel, who she didn't talk to, but she's talked to him, but she didn't talk about them yesterday, as they walk past this place right at about 10:25 or thereabouts. And there's another witness whose name is Robert Heidstra. Robert Heidstra is in an alley one street over. But when you go out there, you'll be able to see how well you can hear late at night, especially on a Sunday night at this location. Mr. Heidstra, according to his statements, is walking in this alley. And now it's about 10:35 or 10:40. As he walks parallel to where Bundy residence is, will be then looking west. He hears the sound of like arguing, and he hears someone or a voice say, "Hey, hey, hey." And he hears
It was Fat
sound
Albert.
of a fence closing. And he continues on walking his dog. Now, this is at 10:40 or thereabouts. And you know then at 10:45, Marianne Gertrude sees these four men running from 875 down toward her direction, and she believes they're coming after her at that point. In her statement to you yesterday, Ms. Clark talked to you a lot about Alan Park, and I read you some of his transcripts, some of his testimony that you didn't hear about. And I think there'll be considerably more with regard to Mr. Park and to Mr. Cato, Cato Kalin. An interesting man. And I think that it'll be interesting when you hear from Mr. Cato Kalin about Mr. Simpson and how you appear.
Hey, it's Fat Albert.
Just before we wrap
Bill
up
Cosby.
for lunch, I think the evidence will show you that in order to believe that OJ Simpson committed these horrible murders, you'd have to believe that he came back from back east where he'd been working to come to his daughter's recital, attended that recital. You see his picture there. He was home getting ready for a trip to Chicago that had been long pre-planned, that he was hungry. The evidence will be that he didn't have any dollar bills or $20 bills
Dollar bills.
He asked to
y'all.
borrow some money from Cato Kalin. Cato Kalin gave him this money. He went and had a Big Mac. You have to believe that he was planning to kill his wife either before he got this Big Mac or then went and got the Big Mac. But Cato Kalin will describe he was dressed in some kind of a sweat clothes and some tennis shoes. If you follow the people's case, you'd have to believe that he then came home and said, gee, I think what I'll do is I'll go over and kill my wife now. And I think I'll take these tennis shoes off and put on some dress shoes, some hard sole shoes and change clothes, knowing he's going to be leaving shortly to go to the airport.
Big Mac attack.
And then you'd have to believe that, to believe their theory. And then to make their theory work, they spend all this time talking about the plaintive wail of a dog. Because they've got to make this as early as possible at 10:15. We know that that's not correct based upon the facts that you've heard. And to conclude, isn't it interesting that in all of the discussion yesterday by these two very excellent lawyers, they never once mentioned their coroner, Dr. Golden. He's another mysterious mystery witness they don't want to talk about. And when we come back this afternoon, let's talk about why the prosecution doesn't want you to know about Dr. Golden. Let's talk about when Ms. Clark says, well, you can't really fix the time of death here with any precision. We will have testimony from one of the leading pathologists in the United States, Michael Batten, who's also worked for the LA County District Attorney's Office, who's written.
There's another one. Here we have another example of the best guy at something coming and testifying.
In a book about the John Belushi death. He was able to pinpoint the time of death to within 1 hour. And yet in this case, because the coroner was not called for 10 hours after these bodies were found, or 8 hours, and they got out there about 10 hours, violating the state law, we are precluded from pinpointing this. And they have to tell you that it's about a dog's wail when a man's life is at stake. We'll pick up after lunch, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will stand in recess for the jury until 1:30. Let me speak to counsel.
So there we have it. There's the morning session of the defense opening statements. Next week, we'll wrap it up with the afternoon parts of the argument. So what do you think? A little bit better than Chris Darden and Marcia Clark? I would say so. Certainly way, way better. Engaging, dynamic. He was using his vocal inflections. He was using emotion, hand gestures, and frankly, argument. I mean, good, strong statements that some of them did border on being a little bit argumentative. But he's good. He's slick. He's an orator. He knows how to talk. He knows how to influence the jury through words. And the prosecution should have been doing it. It's just almost like they were just going through the motions. Like, we're prosecuting OJ or somebody else. It doesn't matter to me. So let's go. He's, DJ says he's entertaining, engaging. And well, again, DJ here says I came to the. We just did that one. Sorry about that. Winning reality. Yeah, revisit this one for a guy who's against marriage. Watching dramas about housewives is somewhat troubling. Yeah, like I said, that's the show to show you why you never want to get married and let the government get involved in your relationships. Ito was loving all of this, says DJ again. I still think he was a good lawyer. He made some very good decisions, I thought. I don't really have much fault with his rulings, but as the trial went on, he started to get the fame bug. But I still think his decisions and judgments and rulings were sound, I think. Just he kind of embraced the fame a little bit towards the end, or from the middle to about the end. Christine Bucci Walker says, hey, I feel someone seen something. Do you think with newer technology, they could narrow it down to who actually killed her along with OJ? Well, geez, it sounded like there was a block party going on right about the time she was murdered. She and Ron Brown were murdered. Not Ron Goldman were murdered. There's like 8 people walking their dogs. There's 4 random dudes with ski caps on walking around the street. There's the neighbor lady. There's the guys next door. There was having a block party around that house, I guess, apparently at 10:30 p.m. in the summer in LA. But yeah, who knows? And I guess it just boils down to the fact it doesn't really matter. He could just literally come up and say, I did it. I guess they could find someone else and try to bring charges against them. But but dang. Yeah, even Darden's objections were dry and boring. Unlike Mr. Oh, excuse me, counsel. I would like to sit down, counsel. Oh, yes, thank you. Let's bow to the Japanese American judge. Idiot. That was just stupid. Yeah, as statuesque says, yes, that block was jumping when the murder happened. All righty. Well, that was a good night. I hope it was entertaining. We learned some facts, I think. And again, you can see how things differed then from the way they are now, where the televised trials are now. I mean, there you had the cameras moving around, sweeping through the courtroom, focusing on different people, when now they tend to be fixed in fixed positions on fixed people. So you don't swing the camera around and accidentally catch a juror like this. You definitely, I think, saw some of the objections being played up for the camera. I think a little bit, especially at the beginning or before the jury came. I guess it was, just before the jury came, when Chris Darden was making his arguments in front of the judge. The judge was already going to do, and he didn't need to make. So I think you're seeing now how lawyers tend to be more comfortable with the cameras in the courtroom. They're not fazed by it that much. I don't know. I think it's just it's a different situation that's developed over time. I wish I was drunk. Thank you so much for the super chat. Gonna be on the missing list for a while. I'm back in college, but I'll pop in when I can. Also, how are we? We're doing great. Don't be on the missing list too long. You got lunch, you can do other things. So just, schedule your classes accordingly. You know generally what time I stream. So, get the proper schedule. I expect you to be here. At least be here on October 7th for the fucking Friday stream. That's going to be fun. I wish there were more televised trials. I think every trial should be not necessarily televised, but should be at least put up. We have the technology to put it online now. Every courtroom can have a camera that streams to YouTube. Absolutely no problem doing that. And I think it should be, because we have a right to attend trials. Trials in the United States are open. And as a citizen, you have a right. I mean, unless it's a sensitive thing involving children or generally the vast majority of trials are open to the public. And the only thing that prevents us from being there is a time schedule and logistics and courtroom space. But we all have that right to do it. So I think the way to give that right to people would be to televise, or at least YouTubeize or stream every single trial in every single courtroom. Let us watch them. Let us see. Let us choose which streams we want to watch. Let us choose which legal proceedings we want to see. I absolutely think every single trial should be streamed live. No question. There's no reason it can't be done. YouTube lawyers give more insight and advice, but I just kind of talk out of my ass most of the time, really. But notes on a plane say playing fast and loose with the words facts there, just like Cochran, but boy, did he do it well. C-SPAN is a thing. Yeah, we get to sit and watch the congressional committee hearings that are attended by 6 people. Yeah. Wow. It's night and day between the two. And that's why I think it's good to go back and look at some of these things, because everybody just assumes the jury got it wrong and they were influenced for whatever reason and the OJ did it. You have to look at the legal standard of proof being beyond a reasonable doubt. And already in the first half of their opening statement for the defense, Johnny Cochran has brought up huge amounts of reasonable doubt that the prosecution is going to have to, he's put the prosecution on the defense, I think. He said all of these things that they did wrong, all of these possibilities they missed and didn't follow up on. Now they have to take almost a defensive position and try to explain away those things that Johnny Cochran was critical of in his opening statements. Otherwise, in his closing statements, he can just go back and say, remember I said they didn't do this? Remember I said they didn't do that? Remember I said they didn't talk to these people? Well, they still didn't offer any explanation for what happened. They still didn't say anything to remove the doubt brought on by those witnesses. So, end zone to end zone, they didn't do anything. So the defense is very much in the driver's seat right now. And the prosecution are almost taking a defensive role to counter the non-argument arguments. He got what he paid for. Well, see, that's the thing. Again, that's another common argument. Well, if you have enough money, you can buy your freedom. You can, you're absolutely untrue, in my opinion. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that you can buy your innocence or buy your not guilty verdict. All you can do is level the playing field. The prosecution is the government. They have almost an unlimited budget, especially compared to the average Joe citizen. And if you've got OJ Simpson or Johnny Depp kind of money, you have the ability to hire lawyers that will level a playing field. If we look at the numbers of this, the prosecution, those few people at that table and their team back at ye olde office spent, according to the county assessors, the county auditors, $9 million prosecuting OJ Simpson. The state of California spent $9 million prosecuting OJ Simpson. His lawyer bills were estimated to be somewhere around $5 to $6 million. So the state still spent 1/3 more than he did on his defense. But if OJ Simpson didn't have that $6 million to pay literally nearly every legendary lawyer on planet Earth at that time on his team, and to bring in Nobel Prize winning experts, number one leading defense, domestic abuse lawyers, and also there's other experts they bring in. Their forensic expert, Dr. Henry Lee. I don't know if any of you saw the show, the Netflix show, The Staircase, the case about whether the guy pushed his wife down the stairs or whether she fell. And they had the Chinese American guy, doctor, talking about the blood splatters and how it was on the wall and things. That was him. That was Henry Lee. He was one of OJ Simpson's experts, and he is fucking phenomenal. He's an amazing forensic scientist. So, yeah. DJ says, "Oh, Henry Lee. Yeah, the Henry Lee was The Staircase, good one. Yeah. So that Chinese American guy that was talking about all the blood splatters, he was OJ's forensic expert. So and it is only the amount of money OJ Simpson had that allowed him to try to level the playing field with someone who can come at you with $9 million. Because Charlie says Henry Lee is forensic science in North America. Absolutely. Yeah. And, but the thing is, OJ never paid his lawyers. He couldn't pay his lawyers. He didn't have any money. He's bankrupt. He can't pay the civil judgment if suddenly comes into money. So yeah, I think it was, God, I can't remember which one of the lawyers said it, but he said he got about 2% of his fees that he was owed from OJ. Yeah, so OJ stiffed his lawyers, which didn't make make nice with his lawyers. As a lawyer, always get your payments up front. They made it up on book deals. Some did. Yeah, some did. But well, that's kind of it for tonight. We went again as usual, a little bit overtime. So we'll wrap it up now. So what's coming up for Legal Vices and the Vice Squad in the near future? Tomorrow is Friday. So I will start out. I will do my thing on Friday night, same time as we started today, usually. It's just going to be a rant stream. It's just a general mishmash of stuff. A few just news articles, random news articles. I'm just going to rage for a bit, rant and rage and opine on things. And I'm trying to get a special guest, Legal Mindset. He's got some things. If he can be here, he's going to be here. If not, it'll just be me solo unless someone else wants to join. But which it's just going to be a chill shit show, shit stream, shit post thing tomorrow night. It'll be fun. Like I said, just a bunch of news stories that don't really fit within the general framework of what this type of streams I do on my channel. So it'll be fun. Lighter news stories, lighter legal news stories that don't warrant an entire show of their own. Saturday morning, my time, Friday night, US time, I will be joining Fair and Balanced on her channel for our weekly Unexplained show. It'll be me and Farron and her sister, Hannah. And I don't know if you've seen Fair and Balanced sister, Hannah. You get Hannah and Farron together, and they're funny as hell. So I'm probably just going to stay out of the way and let them talk. So Friday night, my time, Friday morning, US time, my show. Saturday morning, Asia time, Friday night, US time, be Fair and Balanced. Monday, I don't know yet. I know we're supposed to do our Maritime Monday, but the start of my show coincides with the Queen's funeral. So more likely than not, I am just going to take next Monday and stream the Queen's funeral. Come and join me for that if you want. It'll be an absolutely chill stream, mostly just quietly sitting and watching and talking to you guys as it goes on. But like they're estimating that at least 1/4 of the world's population will be watching the Queen's funeral. So I'll probably just be doing that. I'll just probably be streaming it. And we can talk about the royals, good, the bad, the ugly, the nice. Just keep it chill. That's probably what we'll do because I'm just not going to compete with the Queen's funeral. And then Tuesday, I don't know. I haven't really planned next week yet, so that'll just take us up through Monday. I'll have to look at the calendar. I know Tuesday night my time. No. Wednesday morning my time. Tuesday night US time will be Legal Mindset's Pimp Stream with probably with me, Drex, Legal Mindset, and somebody else. I don't know who. I have no idea yet. It was a Law Talk with Mike last time. Maybe he'll be back. I just don't know. I don't know who he's planning on having on the stream. Maybe Fair. I don't know. I know it's going to be me and Legal Mindset. Let's put it that way. I don't know who the other guests will be. But that'll be Tuesday night, U.S. times. I'll let you know as I spend the weekend and just kind of plan out what's happening. All righty. Well, hey, we picked up 10 subscribers today. Thank you so much, everybody. Just pushing our way to that 25,000. I think that would be so cool. I'm just gonna have to kind of beg to be on other people's streams so I can grift off of their subscribers that aren't here yet. Just because I want to hit that 25,000. So when it comes to the Fuck It Friday stream, we can just go completely off the rails. That would be fun. That would be fun to have a Fuck It Friday 25,000 subscriber stream. So I'm pushing for that. I will do what I can to get us up to the 25,000 mark. So thanks everybody for being here. Mods, we had a huge mod turnout tonight. We appreciate everybody. You're all great. Couldn't do this without you mods. Who do we have here now? We've got Alan still here. Georgina's still here. Are you the only two that are still here? Looks like it, just kind of scrolling back through. Beaver's unit. Yeah, I guess she disappeared earlier on. I don't know. Either she's being intensely quiet, one of the two, but she's usually not quiet, so I guess she bailed. But yeah, it's good to see so many members here. The ones that you had your gifted memberships, they'll be coming up for renewal in a few weeks. I guess 3 weeks or so. I hope you'll consider joining the members. That would be awesome. Once the gifted membership period is up, it'd be great if you stuck around. But hey, it's entirely up to you. Thank you all for the super chat. Flux, thank you for your mega super chat. That was deeply appreciated. And thank you all for your other super chats. Again, I know I say this every now, but it's humbling that you will take your hard-earned money and give it to me just because I'm here talking shit. I try to entertain, I try to educate if I absolutely have to, but it's a great time we spend here, and the fact that you spend it with me and you support with your presence and financially is just crazy to me, and I deeply appreciate it. As we all wrap this up, don't forget to hit that like button on your way out. We're at 233. It's kind of averagey. Come back tomorrow for the relaxation stream. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. The remaining 152 of you are here. If one of you is not subscribed, or if more of you aren't subscribed, just hit that subscription button. We'll have a lot of fun tomorrow. I guarantee it. Notifications, sign up. Make sure you're still subscribed if you've subscribed. And that's about it. We had a good Thursday night. Tomorrow is going to be a fun Friday. Alcohol may be involved because it's Friday night. And then catch me Friday night for me anyway. So 22 hours from now, check me out. Then 36 hours from now, I'll be on with Farron. It'll be a great weekend. I look forward to spending it with all of you. Until tomorrow, until we meet again, thank you again for everything. And do not forget to enjoy your legal vices. Peace.